Hello, you are listening to Trump Republic Radio. It is June 11th, 2017. I'm your host, Enzo Quesada, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Bobby Hester.
Hello, everyone.
And this week on the show, we have two guests. We haven't had two guests on in a while, but we have on Sam Montoya and Kris Celera.
Здравствуйте.
What's up?
Sam, you gotta leave at, some point during this recording, so, we'll see how far we can get through the show with you. But, so one thing we want to give preface, because we mentioned on the last midweek show that we're going to an anti-Sharia march, and actually everyone on the show was at the march yesterday at the Capitol in Austin. And we're not really going to get into what we did so much in Austin, though, on this show. We're going to leave that for the midweek show on Wednesday, so we're going to leave you waiting a little bit, but we're going to have on another person, in inclusion to me and Bobby and Kris, talking about what we did there. And it will be definitely a very good one because I got some things to say what happened yesterday. It was an interesting event, but yeah, with that said, let's get into the national news. So the first thing that we wanted to talk about was what happened with Comey this week. Didn't Comey testify on Thursday?
That is correct. Comey finally testified in front of Congress, and it was one of those things where the left thought it was going to be one of those, Trump's downfall type things, but we were completely vindicated as Trump supporters because of the things that he said, and we're going to get into detail about that.
Yeah, so I didn't watch the testimony live when it happened. I didn't watch anything. I know you did though, right?
Yeah, I watched about the last half or so of it. I missed the beginning.
Kris or Sam, did you guys get to watch it at all?
Yeah, I got to see it. And what did the testimony of my homie Comey show me? Pile of baloney.
That's pretty much just the news that I've gotten out of what he said in the testifying. I mean, we know now that Trump was never under investigation, so Trump didn't obstruct anything because there was nothing to obstruct. But Comey wasn't willing to leak to of all the things that Comey's leaked. He wasn't able to leak to the press that Trump wasn't under investigation, even though Trump said multiple times, Comey told me I'm not under investigation.
Yeah, and what you said there, the fact that of all the things that got leaked, that was the one thing that wasn't, that was what Marco Rubio actually said. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of Marco Rubio, but I do have to give credit where credit is due. He was very good during that congressional hearing.
Yeah. And it also it debunks a lot of the speculation around connections for contact between Russians and the Trump administration up to this point. I mean, the stuff with Michael Flynn, as we already know, was perfectly legal. Nothing wrong happened. Trump fired him because he didn't completely tell the truth to Mike Pence. You can agree with that decision or not, but I guess it just at this point we see that the Trump-Russia narrative is free-falling, collapsing. I know they're going to talk about it anyways forever because that's all they like to do, but...
Yeah, and more about Michael Flynn. Michael Flynn, he was supposed to be their smoking gun. He was supposed to be the weakest link in the Trump administration that connects him to the Russians. But Comey, in his testimony, admitted that Michael Flynn wasn't the focus of the investigation. If he's not the focus, there is no smoking gun.
Wasn't another thing that it showed that Comey, he admitted to being an obstruction of justice with the Clinton investigation?
Yeah, it was actually, I think it was it Susan Rice was her name? Or one of the...
Loretta Lynch.
I'm sorry, yes, it was Loretta Lynch actually told Comey, don't call it an investigation of Clinton, call it a matter, because it doesn't sound as bad. So that's pretty much actual obstruction of justice.
Yeah, and so, it just seems very obvious at this point that just Comey was a real, politically motivated individual at the top of the FBI, and we saw that with how he was behaving for the longest of time, and now it's pretty great that he's gone, but, when a guy behaves the way James Comey has at the very top of, our, law enforcement and judicial system, it really hurts the integrity of every single thing we're doing. And it's been undermining this Russia narrative, the Trump administration, from the very get-go. if this stuff wasn't happening, think of what we could have accomplished by now. We have been held back by this, if you want to admit it to it or not. But
Yeah, but anyways, I wanted to kind of get into some of the other stuff about Comey that we were talking about. But it turns out he was the guy who was behind some of those leaks. And if you remember, they made the big deal about the whole memo that he wrote, which was pretty much like scribbles of notes that he took in the meeting. Says that I think it was his friend or his brother that he was giving the information out to, and he told that person to leak it to the press. And turns out he doesn't even have the original copy of it anymore. So there's still no evidence that it exists, although the fact that he did testify under oath that he did make it. But that just proves to you how, I don't want to know if it's stupid or corrupt, but the fact that, like you said, he is a politically motivated person. So the fact that, we did confirm that he was behind some of those leaks, that's terrible.
I heard some people say he could have broken the law there with that as well.
I mean, it's very possible because the question is, when he wrote that memo, is that his personal property or is it the property of the FBI? Because
Right.
if he still had a copy currently and it was property of the FBI, then that would be illegal to not have it. But if the if it was FBI property, then where is the original copy? Why was it deleted?
He also signed a non-disclosure agreement anyway,
Yeah.
and so he can get sued at a minimum.
and my thing was just this whole memo, to take it back a second, we're supposed to go off the testimony of Comey's memo that he wrote, but say, me and you, Bobby, we have a conversation, and I took notes on it as well. I could just write down, oh, well, Bobby interrupted me during this conversation 15 times, and then I go testify on that. That's not evidence at all. That's just stuff Comey wrote down and then said, so.
And I mean, there were a lot of people on our side who were complaining about the fact that he did write a memo. I'm actually not on that side because anybody who goes to any meetings at any job is probably going to take notes. And so if you consider that pretty much what the memo was, it was never an official memo. It was literally like scribblings on a piece of paper is what we're referring to. This.
Yeah.
It's only called a memo because it sounds better in a legal sense. But, I personally, I don't hate him for the fact that he kept a memo, but what he did with it and how it was done, that's where the problems lie.
And there was one person who made some statements in regards to this whole situation with Comey that I thought was very significant. Jeb Bush, not for maybe positive reasons, but I just former Florida governor and GOP presidential candidate Jeb Bush said he doesn't think President Trump obstructed justice when he fired former FBI Director James Comey. When Bush, who spoke yesterday, in the article says, spoke yesterday, he was asked on whether he thought Trump obstructed justice, and his response was, "No, I don't, but who cares what I think?" I just want to put that in there because that's like the best thing ever. It's like typical Jeb.
Yeah, but getting into some of the other Comey stuff, we do have to talk about the fact that there was a lot of fake news that was destroyed because of his testimony. And Comey even talked about this one New York Times article that said that Trump had repeated contacts with Russians. He specifically mentioned it during his testimony and called it fake news, saying that it was a completely fabricated story. During his testimony, he said, "This New York Times article, it's not real."
This is how prevalent fake news is at the moment, where he has to dispel articles that are being written by these major, newspapers during the middle of his testimony. Like the fake news around everything related to Russia is just weaponized insanity at this point.
Yeah, and there was both CNN and ABC both had to issue retractions when they realized that the Comey testimony contradicted their reporting. And CNN even had a countdown timer to his testimony. And once they realized that, that leaked transcript of his opening testimony, once they realized it was actually going to help Trump and not hurt him, they took off their countdown timer. At the exact same time, Fox News put one up. And I just wanted to mention one other thing that I thought was funny was so many of the bars in the DC area had like Comey happy hour. They were treating it like the Super Bowl, and people were coming in at like 10 a.m. to like drink and watch it. And some of the pictures of those people, once they realized it was helping Trump, they looked so depressed. It was like election night all over again.
And they're just drinking themselves, depressed early in the day. When they should be productive on a Thursday, but...
Yeah, and Chris Matthews, who is as liberal as they come, he even admitted that the Russian narrative fell apart when listening to this testimony. So that's the signal of the end. So what's next after tax returns, Russia?
I mean, I'm kind of depressed that I know that they're going to continue to run with the Trump-Russia collusion theory no matter what, but it is dead now. It's been proven false. There still was no evidence to ever suggest it. I'm kind of sad because I really wanted the Democrats to run with that all the way through the midterms. And, I mean, but like you said, what do they have to run on now? Trump even tweeted this morning. He's like, what do they have left? They have nothing. So...
Even then, though, it's a falsehood that's been repeated so many times over and over and over again. People just do believe it's real. There's still people that, people on the left that just believe Trump colluded with Russia and that's why he's our president. They will always believe that. They will never change their viewpoint.
Yeah, but as that book Shattered, the one about Hillary Clinton's campaign, says, she came up with that theory, or not came up with it, but basically her campaign's goal was to perpetuate that theory on election night. And so from that day to the day Comey testified, there's been no evidence. Just like you said, all it's doing is really hurting the country. And I mean, sure, you could say there's conspiracy theorists out there that are going to get stuck with it because it's been repeated. But without evidence, and just because we need to get things done, the legislative calendar is ticking here. I mean, we kind of need to get things done. We kind of need to put this to bed in a way. So if Mueller, or what is his name, Mueller?
Yeah, Mueller.
If he comes to a conclusion to this pretty quickly, that's going to be better for the country. That's all I think.
I don't think it's going to be coming very quickly, though.
He said 3 months.
3 months?
Is what he's saying. But they can always branch out and have different kind of things tied to his investigation. So
Yeah.
3 months in politics is a very long time.
Yeah, tons of things happen in 3 months. But any other thoughts on this Comey stuff? Should we move on? Yeah, let's move on. So the next thing we want to get into was this NSA leaker that got arrested. The 25-year-old reality winner. Bobby, do you want to talk some about this?
Well, she's more like reality loser, am I right? Anyways, but yeah, she was a NSA contractor who got hired after the election, actually. And this is a person with a top-secret security clearance. She was a Bernie Sanders supporter. She was pro-Palestine and pro-Jihad. She was a supporter of the Women's March. And apparently, she was a vegan as well.
And she thought white people were the problem.
She thought white people were the problem. Multiple times on all of her some Facebook posts as well as Twitter posts that she wrote, she would call Trump an idiot and an asshole and stuff like that. And anybody who has a top secret security clearance, if people saw those social media posts, they would immediately revoke it.
Yeah, it's
and so
too partisan for something that important.
My view on this is that she was put in there on purpose to leak that stuff. And she's just one pawn in the big political game of chess that's currently going on. This is not going to be the end of all the leaking, although it was a significant portion of it. But there's definitely more people involved in this, not just her. So I'm glad it happened, but we'll continue to talk about it.
Oh, yeah, and this is the unfortunate effect of this is that's going to keep the Russian narrative on life support, because talking about how to deal with Russian hackers and talks about voting machines, but that's where people they'll just read the headlines, the general population, and say, oh, that's just more proof that Russians hacked voting machines. But if you talk to any voting machine company, we talked to, was it Express Votes? Last week?
I believe it was.
Yeah, we talked to Express Votes. Express Votes talked about the voting machine apparatus, how it is not networked. If something's not hooked up to the internet, there's no way you can hack it. You have to physically tamper with one physical voting machine, one at a time, in order to pull this off. You can't steal an election by hacking it.
Not only that, but what I just wanted to mention, along the fact that you said that, a lot of those, they're offline. When people were talking about what the Russian hacking actually was, they said that it was, it was similar to like the phishing email that John Podesta got. and they sent out all these different, emails and whatnot that had viruses, and and 2 computers out of like 10 something thousand computers that got affected by this stuff. 2 of them were computers that were run by people that were working at voting centers. So it was those laptops, and that's their evidence that they were trying to hack the election. When in reality, that was so minuscule, and it didn't even do anything. Like Kris said, it didn't change any vote totals. It didn't do anything. And so it was, that's where they get that from.
Yeah. So I remember last week we reported that we had caught 3 leakers, and now this week we caught another one. It seems like we're just going to, at this point, be catching leakers maybe left and right. It's leaking out.
And if you remember, yeah, sorry to interrupt you, and if you remember back when Trump was doing his overseas trip, people were saying that when he got back, they were going to start arresting all the leakers, and that's exactly what's happened. It took a week or so after he got back, but it seems like boom, 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 it's all coming down. But one last thing I wanted to mention about Reality Winner, if that's even her real name, I guess it is. That's kind of a really weird name. That's the really weird name. Anyways, she's been denied bail, which is very good. And the reason why is apparently she plotted to burn down the White House, and she wanted to join the Taliban. There was one social media post she had that went along the lines of saying, if Trump starts a war with Iran, I'm going to join Iran's side. Keep in mind, that's coming from a person with top secret security clearance.
Right, and actually, back to your point of where she was put in there on purpose. Okay, she's 25. Who hired her? Who vetted her? Who is in charge of that? That person maybe needs to be investigated, because if your theory's right, then that person is actively focused on allowing these people to get the clearance, knowing that it's going to undermine Trump.
And, even if she wasn't put there on purpose, you still got to look at the people who are in charge of making sure she's not, giving out top secret information. People monitor social media posts if you have top secret security clearance.
Yeah, they dropped the ball.
They would have immediately got that, especially since so many of those posts were from January, right after she got hired. So even if she wasn't there on purpose, you really just got to look at the people that hired her, the people that vetted her, the people that were in charge of making sure she wasn't doing anything wrong. Because absolutely right, those people dropped the ball, and that needs to be investigated as well.
Oh, severely. To have someone so obviously not fit for the position put in that position and then leaking like that, there has to be intention at some point. But let's get into this next thing that we have. So it looks like the White House is looking to have a vote on health care this summer, and then they want to meet up after the Labor Day break to start working on tax reform. Do you have some stuff on this, Bobby?
Well, I just wanted to quickly mention, we've talked about the Trump administration setting themselves guidelines and dates for different things. So I guess that's good, the fact that they want to get the healthcare vote this summer. And we mentioned on the show before that they definitely need to get tax reform done as soon as possible. So if they can start getting tax reform done in the fall and if they can have it finished and passed, like before the December break that Congress always takes, that would be my view of really good. But they definitely need to have tax reform done by like January, because that's when tax, not 401ks, like W-2s and stuff are going to start going out. So they definitely need to have this stuff done before the January of 2017 or 2018 comes around.
Do you have something to say, Sam? Oh, so another thing that happened this week though is Trump also started his initiative with infrastructure, which I don't think we put anything up on here, but I can talk for a second on that. With his infrastructure, he's looking to massively cut the regulations that we have on infrastructure programs, because he had a press conference when he first unveiled his plan about infrastructure, and he brought out these binders. Remember, did you see this? We were at the restaurant we were eating.
Yeah.
We talked about this. He pulled out these binders of all the regulations that would get in the way of doing, what was it, just like regular highway construction thing?
Yeah, it was like the regulations to build like a 100-mile stretch of highway or something similar to that.
And it was just these binders full of, reports and stuff and regulations that got in the way of doing that. He just took all those binders and just started throwing them on the ground. Looks like Trump is just wanting to get the government out of the way of all these projects, which could really benefit communities, rebuilding infrastructure, roads, highways, bridges. Another big one that he's looking to do, I know, is also privatizing air control, which, if we privatize it, because what we currently use for air traffic control is a pretty outdated system at this point. It's from the late 80s or late 90s.
Late 90s, early 2000s, that time frame.
Yeah. So, with how air travel goes at the moment, there's so many delays all the time. It really hurts a lot of people. And it hurts the economy as well. We can't function well when this stuff's happening. So he's looking to privatize and kind of change up the industry in that sense to relieve the burden which is causing us to have so many delays in airports. But yeah, how do you feel about pushing back the reform vote towards fall and then working on healthcare right now? Do you think that's really the right game plan to be going?
I mean, they've already tried and failed once on healthcare. So, and then I know the House passed the repeal of Obamacare. It still hasn't even gone to the Senate yet, and it's going to be a complete mess. I want it to be done as quickly as possible, but I also want it to be done right. And if I was to view myself as just an average American citizen coming into the 2018 midterms, if healthcare still wasn't fixed, I would start to blame Republicans for not fixing it, and that can definitely hurt them in the midterms. And Obamacare is failing. It has been failing. As we said, there's some states where the very last Obamacare insurance providers pulling out. There's going to be no one left in certain states. I think, was it Colorado that was one, or maybe it was Iowa.
I know Arizona, or I know Iowa's in that situation. I know Arizona's down to one.
Yeah.
I don't need to get into all
But anyways,
states,
my point being is as of right now, Democrats still own Obamacare, and it is their fault. But the longer Republicans screw up and can't fix it, it's going to become their fault as well, and that's going to hurt them if they don't do anything, A, the right way, and B, soon.
I don't really have faith that they're going to get it done this summer. Nothing that they've done recently has given me, reason to believe that they will.
Yeah, I mean, we control both houses of Congress, and yet I still have a very overwhelmingly negative view of what Congress actually does.
I think tax reform has definitely a better chance of happening, but even then, there's still a lot of people that want to stand in the way of that as well.
Yeah,
so.
I think even Paul Ryan said something about not wanting to pass Trump's plan. He wanted to pass his own tax reform plan.
Wow.
So we definitely need to get on top of that.
Yeah, I mean, when was the last time we had tax reform? In the 80s, right? Reagan?
Big tax reform was in the 80s. There was a little bit of tax reform in the early 2000s under Bush, but nothing major since then.
But let's go into this thing with Laura Trump you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, obviously, a lot of people blamed Obama for never stopping campaigning, but I never really complained about that, but a lot of people are saying the same thing about Trump, that he's never going to stop campaigning. Trump is at his best when he is campaigning, and I hope he continues to do it. But apparently there's a story coming out that says that Laura Trump, who is Trump's daughter-in-law and the wife of Eric Trump, she's going to be leading his 2020 re-election campaign.
Wow.
Now, Donald Trump Jr. Has been very, very outspoken with his social media posts. His Twitter posts are almost better than his father's in some regards. He's very active on there. But Eric Trump's kind of been, behind the scenes, working around, helping run some of the charities and whatnot that the Trump organization does. And so I think having Laura Trump in there is going to be a really, really big benefit for 2020 once it comes around.
Yeah, I don't really know much about her personally, but it is good that they're keeping it once again within the family. I feel like that's the one thing that was really different from them as far as how they stacked up against all the other GOP candidates. It was the family business, the business of Trump kind of personified through his campaign, and some people are turned away from that, but it was something I enjoyed personally, as opposed to just having it felt more human just by him having his family a part of his campaign like it was.
I would rather have her running it than Ivanka.
Oosh. Opinions on Ivanka are not the highest on the show anymore. But
So Jeff Sessions.
Jeff Sessions. Yes, Jeff Sessions, Secretary General Jeff Sessions recently. This
Attorney
week,
General Jeff Sessions.
I'm a little flustered at the moment. Cut me off with my Ivanka stuff. Attorney General Jeff Sessions has they've discovered that there has been something of an Obama-era slush fund that's been directing money to leftist organizations. But as of this week, we're cutting that stuff off.
Yeah, it is a gross displacement of a government's proper role. When it comes to judicial agreements, a government should act as a facilitator, not as a mediator, an arbiter. So whenever there is lawsuits against major corporations, they will, if they can find a way to do it, they'll add on to the settlement agreement that you have to donate to these left-wing activist groups as well as part of the agreement. For example, there's Council La Raza, National Urban League, National Community Reinvestment Coalition. These are clearly political organizations. They should not be favored by the governments and funneling millions of dollars. And we don't even know the extent of how many millions went to these organizations.
I believe it was billions that
Billions.
they suggested. Billions of dollars going to leftist organizations. Money that could, be spent on pretty much anything else and be better spent.
Like on infrastructure.
Yeah. It's just, we keep on looking back at what we find from the Obama administration, and just like, what Ben Carson found at HUD, billions of dollars being misused, and now what we're finding, even more billions of dollars being sent to organizations which obviously favor stuff that Obama was in favor of. This is just not the function of government to do things like this. It's a gross bias that it's great that stuff's over. Any other thoughts on it, or should we get into these economic things we got here, Bobby?
I think that we should go ahead and get into the economics.
Yeah, so the first thing that we have here is the U.S. and Mexico has reached a deal ahead of their NAFTA talks, which, do you remember when Trump was looking to do the NAFTA talks?
I believe that was also around the fall.
I believe it was like September. But do you have the specifics up on this?
Well, there's not too many specifics over what the trade deal actually does, but it was one of those disputes that have been going on for a while as to the trade of sugar and imports of high fructose corn syrup. And that was one of those things that people were worried that NAFTA talks might hurt it. So it's good that we actually got it done. Now, the problem is a lot of the U.S. sugar industry is not exactly happy with it. They're trying to get the administration to stop it. And they said there's also some Mexican companies that are not happy with the deal. So it's very possible that when they renegotiate NAFTA, it will change parts of this deal that we've made. But at least, we got the two sides to come together and make a deal. So it's not the end goal, but it is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, and the talks around NAFTA, when we do go into renegotiation around that, are definitely going to be very intense. I mean, relations with Mexico is not the best at the moment, but at least we've kind of gotten some of the stuff out of the way before we go into it. Similar to like when we were negotiating with China, you just kind of do this on a industry basis. You can't do it all at once.
Yeah, and one of the major things that was changing, that was changed for the Mexican trade deal with the sugar, was just a lot of import-export quotas that we had, and they had. A lot of it was just changing numbers like that.
Yeah. Let's go into the stuff that we have out of Alabama. So, in Alabama, they've passed a law that requires people to work to receive food stamps. And in Alabama counties, they've seen a drop in food stamp usage by 85%.
Yeah, and these were 13 previously exempted Alabama counties. And once they implemented what the rest of Alabama was doing, then as you saw, there was a drastic drop. It's for able-bodied adults who have no dependents.
Yeah, so now that money that we have on food stamps can be better focused on the people that need it, the dependents, the families that, are working and are trying to create a life for themselves, but just need that existence, as opposed to people that, weren't working, just trying to get the best one-up they can on the system.
Can you imagine if that was national requirement?
Wasn't it also in Georgia they did something similar to this, Bobby?
It was, but the numbers were less. It was like 60-something%, I believe.
But
Wow,
yeah,
that's still pretty high.
Yeah, that's still very good.
Just not 85%.
Yeah.
yeah. Though I mean, if this was something done on a national scale, you'd see so many people fall off of it. It's pretty amazing to think that 85% of the people that are on food stamps will leave it the second you require them to work.
So many people complain that food stamp usage is higher in like the southern Republican states. I would love to see if a lot of different states pass this law, how that would actually change, because that would also defeat a leftist narrative as well.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm just gonna agree with you on that. But let's go into the stuff with the coal mine that just opened up in Pennsylvania. So, the first coal mine under the presidency of Donald Trump has just opened up in Pennsylvania, and protecting the coal industry was a big thing that Donald Trump campaigned over. His victory in, say, West Virginia can be pretty much directly attributed to how he
Kentucky as
campaigned.
well.
Kentucky as well. And, Hillary Clinton was going out and saying, I'm going to bankrupt the coal industry. So, there's entire states that livelihoods depended on these coal mines, and now we got a new one up. Do you have the stuff up on this?
Yeah, it's opening up in Somerset County, which is right outside of Pittsburgh. And they said that at the beginning there's only going to be about 70 jobs being created, but as it goes on, there's going to be more and more as it gets bigger and just starts getting used more. But what was interesting was that Pennsylvania's governor is Democrat Tom Wolf. He actually endorsed Hillary Clinton, but when they were opening up the mine to commemorate it happening, he was joining them. And Trump was one of the ones who had a video message commemorating it being opened. So that's very interesting, the fact that he's kind of come around on that.
Yeah, I'm personally pretty pleased with what's happening there. I mean, I always backed the usage of coal, and the left, they always complain so much about coal and its emissions and all this stuff. But the thing is, if we just get rid of the industry here in the United States, there's still a global market for that stuff. They're just gonna, some other country's just gonna be the one profiting from this. This thing is gonna still exist. Coal is a cheap fuel to use. Why should we economically hamstring ourselves just so that the third world can benefit from our, postulating in this stupid abstract? This kind of goes back to that Paris Agreement stuff we were talking about last week, but yeah, it's just good to see that Donald Trump doesn't fall for that kind of stuff.
And the one thing I also wanted to mention was, like we said, that's one of the reasons Pennsylvania, which had been a blue state for a very long time, switched to go to him. So, as I've been saying on the show before and before, if Trump can keep his promises, they will reward him by voting for him again. So this is one of those things, it just helps us keep Pennsylvania red for 2020 if stuff like this keeps happening.
Yeah, it seems like he's on track to do that with things like this happening. And, how we report about factories coming back to Michigan. We've been seeing them coming back all across the Midwest. These are the places that weren't supposed to go to Trump at all, but all flipped to him, and they seem like some of the most positively affected states by the Trump administration so far. But do you want to go into this hurricane season stuff? I don't really know about this.
I haven't done too much of it, but apparently they said that NOAA is predicting this to be an above normal year for large hurricanes to hit. And if you think about it, the last major hurricane to actually hit the Gulf was Hurricane Katrina. All the other ones have hit the East Coast or haven't been too major. And so it's very possible that with an above average year, an above normal year for large hurricanes, we could possibly get a Category 4 or a Category 5 develop in the Gulf of Mexico. And it's been 12 years since the last one happened, and I looked one time at a chart that had a list of Category 4 and Category 5 hurricanes that made landfall, and it seems like there's one about every 3 or 4 years. So for there to not be one in the last 12 years, we are well overdue for another one. But the problem is, having one hit could very well disrupt a lot of the oil drilling platforms that are in the Gulf of Mexico, which provide a significant portion of the United States' oil at this point. So if a major hurricane was to hit and those were shut down, that could significantly impact oil prices and send it back up higher, as it's been dropping recently.
Yeah, the NOAA, they believe that there's a 70% likelihood that there will be between 11 to 17 named storms. Mind you, Hurricanes Katrina and Rita back in 2005, those two hurricanes alone destroyed over 100 oil platforms and damaged around 50, 60 more. And within a few weeks, oil prices jumped 20% because of the outages.
Yeah, and if you think about it, we've made a lot of major strides since then in terms of the number of oil platforms. Like, there's a lot more. So if that knocked out that many 10 years ago, imagine how many it could knock out right now.
There was actually an executive order that Trump did, I believe it was 2 months ago, that opened up the Gulf for more offshore oil platforms to be created. So if there has been response by the oil industry to go ahead with that, they may be affected by these hurricanes coming through. So that's the thing.
Pray for El Nino.
Pray for El Nino not to happen.
Oh, El Nino actually suppresses hurricane activity.
Oh.
You should pray for it to happen.
Oh. I don't know stuff about the
Gotta
weather
get your
very
terms
well.
right, Enzo.
I know politics more than I do the weather. The last thing we wanted to get into on the economic front, though, was Jeff Bezos. Formerly the richest man in the world, now he fell down back to third.
That all happened because of what happened on Friday. A lot of the tech stocks just, I'm not going to say they crashed, but during the day of trading, most of the stocks were up. And it was about the last 3 or 4 hours of trading. Everything, especially in the NASDAQ, which if you know, the NASDAQ is made up of all like tech stocks, it just significantly took a nosedive. And it finished down like 1.5% for the day, which is the worst drop for the NASDAQ of the year so far. And there are a lot of different factors going into why that actually happened. A lot of it was because Apple released a statement saying that the chips in their new iPhones might have slower download speeds than beforehand, which, you know, that's not what people want to hear. And that also affects other companies because so many companies invest in each other, especially in tech stocks. So because that was just one story of many, obviously, but a lot of that stuff kind of came together. Now, some people are saying, oh, you know, this is the Trump bubble. It's finally being popped. It's going to be like the tech bubble of the late 2000s, or I'm sorry, not late 2000s, late 1990s, early 2000s. It's not that. I want to wait to see what happens next week. It'll probably go back up because people see it as a buying opportunity for cheaper stocks. So just, you know, don't freak out. Let things happen. If it keeps going down, then worry. If it flatlines or starts to go back up, just know it's correcting itself. So that's part of the reason why Jeff Bezos went from first to third in a day, was because of all the tech stocks going down at once.
I don't think he'd be too worried about that happening either if he has the foresight to see what's happening in the market at the moment.
I mean, as we said, markets fluctuate. They go up sometimes. They go down sometimes. You're going to have random days where it goes down at almost 2% because of tiny little things, and you're going to have days where it goes up 2% because of tiny little things. So none of the major tech people are really, really worried right now for good reason. So once they become worried, I will become worried. They're not worried right now. So we'll continue to keep on keeping on.
Yeah. So let's get into this mini helicopter thing. You're going to have to tell me about that. I don't know what this is.
Yeah, so I think this was actually from a company from... oh, excuse me, I had to cough. There's actually a company that came out of the Czech Republic. They've developed a car that has like helicopter blades in the top, but 3 wheels at the bottom.
So it's more a helicopter that's a car than a car.
Well, it's
a
both
helicopter.
because you
No,
can...
I'm saying because I saw the design. He said we started, instead of starting to make a car fly, we made a helicopter that could drive.
Yeah, pretty much. It's called the gyro drive, but it's a mini helicopter that can be both driven on the road and can be flown as a helicopter. Now, I think it only seats 1 or 2 people, but people have been wanting flying cars for a long time, and most of those people imagine them being like hovering things. So if you can start off with like helicopter blades and move on, that's great. I would love to see one of these things actually fly. I would love to see it in person. Obviously, it's probably going to be a few years before they even have major tests of them out. I think they've only built one working model, but I would love to see where that goes for the future.
Yeah, I think it's just hilarious that they beat like all the major companies that are trying to make flying cars.
Yeah, just this normal Czech company that did it.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think it's a pretty cool little thing.
Yeah, I'm ready for helicopter rides.
There's only one problem with it as of right now. It seats 2 people, which is kind of a correction which I had earlier. I thought it was 1 or 2. It seats 2. The problem is its maximum driving speed on the road is only 25 miles per hour.
Oh, God.
Ooh. Yeah. So, but then again, think about it. If you're going to be going any major distances, you're probably going to want to fly anyways. Yeah. Like, why drive 60 miles on the highway? You can just fly. And
I see this as a good thing for the more isolated places of America, such as Alaska, to where people there, they tend to fly over drive anyway.
Yeah. And they said that it only needs about 100 meters to take off. So I'm guessing it's kind of going to take off like a plane. You got to drive, and then it spins and gets the speed, then you can just take off. So I doubt you can just take off from a standstill. Maybe in later models they might do that. As of right now, you don't, but that's okay. But they said it can reach a top speed of 180 kilometers per hour in the air. I'm not the best at converting that to miles per hour, but I think that's probably around 120 or so miles per hour in the air.
That.
And its flying range is 600 kilometers, which is about, 450, 500 miles?
Yeah.
Something like that. So,
something like that.
It can fly a good distance before it needs to come back down. And, I think that's a good benefit for the future.
They just need to fix that speed thing, 25 miles per hour on the ground.
Yeah, it says that when you land the thing and you take the rotor blades, they have to kind of be locked into place when you're driving. So you will physically have to get out and do that right now using this model. But they said that it has a built-in pull-out license plate that transforms it into a road vehicle. So if you land, just, flip the switch and boop, it comes down like a James Bond thing. So I think that's pretty cool. They said the current price starts at 1.5 million korona, which is 57,000 euros or $63,500. So I think that's actually really, really cheap.
For like a flying...
Yeah, for flying.
Yeah.
But obviously that would be for the basic model, and they probably have more advanced ones as well. They said the maximum price it could reach is 4 million korona, which is, I would guess, maybe around $200,000. But $200,000 for a freaking flying helicopter car, people would be willing to pay that if they had the money for it. So obviously,
just need to learn how to fly a helicopter.
Well, I mean, I plan on getting a helicopter license. I would love to be a helicopter pilot. So we'll see where that goes from here.
Helicopters are awesome. I got to ride in one a couple months ago. If I had a helicopter, that'd be the only way I get around.
They said that they're expecting it to hit the markets in 2020. So that's the time frame we're looking at.
Just in time for the election.
When we might need some helicopters.
Think about it. Trump won the last election because he was flying around in his big old Trump plane. Imagine if he's all flying himself around in the gyrocopter.
Well, there are Trump helicopters already.
I know, but imagine if he drives it up and lands it, and he's like, "Hey guys, we want to sell this in America." People would just be like, "That's so cool."
He needs to do that with like his presidential limo. It needs to be half limo, half helicopter.
Well, if you also remember a story that we talked about a few weeks ago, Tokyo has the 2020 Olympic Games, and they wanted to light the torch using a flying car. Now, it's not the same model as the one that we are talking about, but I would assume it would be at least something similar. So it might look like we're finally getting into an era here in the next 4 or 5 years of the beginning of flying cars actually happening, which people have been looking forward to that for decades.
Since the Jetsons.
Yeah, since the Jetsons, since the 50s, since the 60s, people want flying cars. We will see these in our lifetime.
Yes.
That's absolutely cool.
That's a guarantee we'll see this stuff in our lifetime. It's really crazy just to think about. It blows my mind.
I just wanted to mention one last thing that kind of similar to that. I think if you guys remember in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina is where the Wright brothers flew the first plane. I think it would be really, really cool if their first test flight on American soil is at the exact same spot. That would be really cool.
That would be pretty cool. Let's get into immigration, though. I know we got a new sound drop intro for that we made, so let's do that.
Open the door! Immigration!
La migra, vamos, niños!
This week in immigration.
Okay, you can start.
Okay, this week in immigration. I hope you enjoyed that little thing that we put together there. I don't know. Bobby, you seem to have fun making it.
Yeah, we actually made it this morning before we started recording the podcast, so I think it sounds really cool.
You know, eventually we're going to have those for every single segment. It's just been so hard coming up with how to make them. But, so the first thing that we want to get into is it looks like the fear of deportation is driving a lot of people off food stamps. Do you have the stuff up on this, Bobby?
Yes, sir, I do. So, actually, it's taken a little while to come up, so can you mention it real quick?
Well, yeah, I'll read some of it. A crackdown on illegal immigration under presidential Donald Trump has driven some poor people to take a drastic step, opt out of federal food assistance because of their fear of deportation, activists and immigrants say. People who are not legally residents of the U.S. are not eligible to take part in what is formerly known as Supplemental National Assistance Program. But many poor families include a mix of non-legal residents and legal ones, such as children who have citizenship because they are born in the U.S. In those cases, it is often an adult who is not a legal resident who submits the application. Some now feel that it is too dangerous under a president who has made immigration enforcement a priority. Throughout the U.S., there are accounts of people resisting efforts of nonprofit organizations to sign them up for food stamps, letting benefits lapse or withdraw from the program because of the perceived risks. I don't think it has the numbers on how many people are dropping out because of it, which is kind of sad.
Yeah, they mentioned in the article that it's impossible for them to determine the actual numbers, whether it's something that naturally happens during a recession or those who are legitimately acting out of fear. They really don't know. But it is emotional blackmail, so to speak, to when the left talks about, but these poor families, whether they are mixed status or they're all illegal, can't go to food stamps, even though the Department of Agriculture has this on the website. So they say that it's important for non-citizens to know who qualify for food stamps that there is no threat or deportation by signing up for SNAP.
They said that in the 2015 fiscal year, the Department of Agriculture said there were 3.9 million citizen children living with non-citizen parents who did receive food stamps that year.
So, it's just, good. They're not supposed to be getting anything anyways. This is stuff that's supposed to be benefiting our own people, not foreign nationals. Thanks for getting off food stamps for us. The least you can do.
And not to mention, one of the prominent arguments by pro-immigration, pro-illegal immigration, mind you, proponents, they believe that, these migrants who come in here, they contribute to the economy in a positive fashion. Taking money from a public pool that's allotted for Americans is not a positive contribution. And if you don't have enough skills to make your own without government assistance, you are really not the type of person we're looking for in society. I'm saying this as an immigrant myself.
And one of the biggest issues is that the person of the family who is signed up for SNAP is legal. But the problem is they have a lot of family members who are living with them who are in the country illegally. And that money is going to pay them indirectly.
Yeah, that's going to those members as well.
So, yeah, we are subsidizing illegals eating in this country.
Yeah. And, you go back to our interview with Priscilla at the border. You go out to EBT, the illegals would take their EBT cards, cash them out, and send that remittance back to Mexico or back to wherever they come from. I mean, there's so much abuse by illegal aliens of our welfare system. And the left denies it all day, all the while saying, "Oh no, but it's okay. Let's just have as many as want come in. They can all come in. We'll all survive. You can't bleed our system indefinitely just dry, Okay, we can talk about the positive or negative effects of welfare existence. That's an argument to be had, but first off, let's just make sure this is going to help our own people if we're even going to have welfare. Otherwise, there's not going to be welfare for the people that need it. But, any other thoughts on that? Should we move on? Let's move on. So, Governor Cuomo of New York challenged Trump to deport him because he's an immigrant. Do you have that up, Bobby?
Well, that's the thing, though. He's not an immigrant. He was born in New York City.
Yeah, I don't think Cuomo understands what an immigrant
Definition?
is.
He may come from a family of immigrants, which is,
It's like most people.
it's what they say. It's like, this country's a nation of immigrants. All of our parents, they descended from immigrants. Okay, so they came here legally. What's your point? But yeah, he's not an immigrant. That's the thing. So he's blatantly lying.
Yeah, as the only real immigrant in this topic of conversation, even his statement about you want to deport immigrants, Trump is not deporting immigrants, he's deporting illegal aliens. There's a difference. Immigrants who come here legally, or in his case, he was an immigrant who's born here, is by his wayward definition.
Well, the left doesn't know the difference between an illegal immigrant and a legal immigrant. They just lump them all together.
This reminds me of Michael Moore's hashtag I am a refugee, or whatever it was called. And that's what the left does. They like to have this intersectionality where they appropriate demographics where I am X, I am Y. This shows solidarity. They think it's some sort of I am Spartacus analog.
Yeah.
But really, it is a perversion of definitions, which dilutes it and widens it down to where it means nothing.
Yeah, it's just kind of like emotional universalism to where he's just like, oh, well, we're all immigrants, so we all get to stay. And guess what? Everyone else can be immigrants too, so they all get to come in. This is the way this guy thinks. He would agree with that statement.
Yeah, that's one of the Twitter hashtags that went around saying hashtag we are all Muslim.
Ooh, I'm not.
No, that's exactly what it made me think of, was the hashtag we're all Muslim.
Yeah.
They were pushing that at the Women's March, a lot of the speakers there. But it just really makes me question his intelligence, as a person, and he's a governor. I don't know.
Yeah, this was at a rally to get the Democrats riled up to take back
Right.
the House of Representatives in the 2018 midterm elections.
I mean, you gotta wonder, who is the more foolish, the fool or the fools who vote for him?
I say deport them all to just be safe.
Trump should do that. He should be like, okay, you want to get deported? Boom, you're gone.
I feel like he knows. He's just saying this stuff anyways.
He's just trying to get his base riled up.
Yeah. Which, I mean, when we're deporting illegal aliens, yeah, your base is going away. But, I'm sorry, I don't really want foreign nationals voting in the elections. But let's go into the stuff that's happening in Idaho. So this is this case happened a while back, didn't it?
Yes, this case happened a while back, and the problem with this case is that it comes from there's fake news all around from both the left and the right about this case. It started out with the right talking about it. It got
Well, we gotta mention what happened.
Oh, right. My apologies.
There was a girl in Twin Falls, Idaho. She was 5 years old, and she was raped by 3 refugees. They were all children. What you said? They were 10, 14...
And 7.
And 7-year-old rapists. And so they recently went to trial, and they've pled guilty. But they can't disclose what kind of punishment they're going to get because they're juveniles. But this just kind of brings into a greater emphasis of what's happening in this country where, the refugees are raping people. I mean, you look at how it's going on in Europe, and there's an epidemic across the board. And if children of refugees are raping, or child refugees are raping, American citizens, what does it say about the culture where these people come from, why that they're doing these sort of things? It's not a normal thing to have some sort of gang rape amongst children.
So, I heard about this case. I'm just saying, they did plead guilty after all?
Yeah.
Wow.
They entered the guilty pleas. Reportedly, the victim's mother, she wasn't too happy with the sentencing, but the prosecutor says that he faithfully serve to the full extent of the law. So they are charged. It's just we can't know the charges because juvenile records are sealed.
And if they didn't come here, this wouldn't have happened. That's the biggest thing. Like, if you don't let them come, like, these things don't happen. You know, there's a way to prevent this. You just don't let the refugees in. Like, it's a very simple thing.
And that's a girl who's going to have to live with that for the rest of her life.
Yeah. 5 years old. What a great way to start your freaking life.
Yeah, that's something the left doesn't understand. I had a good confrontation in this with the last protest with Antifa. I'm not going to get too much into it, but basically the premise...
You could tell a story,
Yeah.
give it a teaser, I guess.
Yeah, but basically the premise was, because I had a sign that says, just say no to homophobic refugees. Of course, I was wearing all my gay stuff and Trump stuff, so the gay left was triggered by this. So they immediately got into argument saying, oh, but you're calling the refugees homophobic. And that's when I said, culture doesn't exist in a vacuum. They want to infantilize these refugees. They want to make them innocent. They want to believe that all the bad things in the world are the things that they're fleeing from. I point out that they're coming from countries to where they will kill people like us. But they say, oh, maybe they're fleeing from there just because. Maybe they're gay. Maybe they're this or that. But
let's not play maybe, okay? This is not a joke, okay? We have victims all the time, okay? Not just rapes, but look at what happened to Orlando, okay? The anniversary of Orlando is tomorrow. 49 people died from a second-generation refugee. They don't let that guy in, that thing doesn't happen, okay? There's ways to stop this. It's called don't let them in.
yes, or at the very least, advocate for extreme vetting.
Do something, at least where we can have some sort of standard.
Yeah, and just to finish off the story, when I talked about your very points, that there is risk involved, they say, well, there's always risk involved. This is the sunken cost fallacy. It's like saying, if I didn't wear my seatbelt this one time, why should I wear my and I'm fine? Why shouldn't I do away with seatbelt altogether?
These are the same people, the same exact people that talk about rape epidemics on campuses. Where, apparently there's these mass rapes going on all the time where, looks like it was another false claim, once again. But if you try to bring any sort of, hesitancy towards bringing in people from places where we do see the outcomes of these refugees coming in, there are rapes happening. You look at what's happened across the board in Europe. It's an explosion of rape in cities where it's not happening. But you want to prevent that? You're a bad guy. You're a racist.
Oh yes, just to harp on that. If you question with valid statistics the campus rape rate, not to get too far off topic, you're called a sexist. But you do the same thing with actual statistics. When it comes to refugee crime, you're called a racist, despite the fact that Middle Eastern refugees aren't a race in themselves.
Sorry, I'm just really mad.
I don't know, it's perfectly understandable.
This is what happens with all these things that we have problems with refugees are completely preventable. 100%. The fools that try to say, like, no hate, no fear, refugees are welcome here. Why am I not supposed to hate when these things happen? Why am I not supposed to be fearful of things which I've seen happen so many times before? Am I supposed to confuse myself and say, like, oh, well, I'll just pretend that things aren't happening and just keep letting more in and maybe things will be better?
But hey, listen to the words of the great esteemed intellectual that is Katy Perry. Why don't we just do away with borders? Why can't we just all coexist? This is coming from this, not to get to our topic, the ivory tower of liberalism, to where they live in gay communities, they have armed guards, but they get to say, hey, don't live in fear, just live your life as it's gone on. The victims of the Ariana Grande concerts, their families are living in fear. Anyone with a child is living in fear. Anyone who can't afford a bodyguard or lives in a gay community or lives next to these crime-ridden refugee centers and ghettos live in fear. They can't afford protection.
Yeah, my family in Sweden freaking lives in fear with these people. But the thing is, like you, to bring up the people from yesterday protesting, the socialists mainly come from rich backgrounds, okay? I know some of these people personally. They preach all day about diversity. There isn't diversity where they're from. And refugees aren't going to go where they live if we do let in refugees. They don't have to live with these problems.
No, we put them in farming towns. How convenient.
You look how Obama was distributing refugees under his refugee admittance program during his administration, where were all these refugees going?
Idaho.
They're going to rural farming communities.
And there was a lot of them went to Idaho, and now this case happens. That's a direct impact from that, as we were saying.
Just like someone that comes from like a rural farming community, these people, they see it as like it's not good how it is there. They don't have any diversity. They need refugees to actually make them stop being racist or something. I don't know. I don't really comprehend it. But I look at these communities and there's nothing wrong with them. They're great how they are. Maybe they're traditionalist, conservative, whatever. That's how they live their lives there. But these people, they look at those communities and they see them as evil, and they need refugees to save them from themselves, apparently.
That's Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think Muslims overall, you could say, they integrate better in America than they do in Europe. But
we barely have any, though, in this country.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's all those factors. I mean, we're basically...
And I don't really think that, it's very well proven in this country that they do assimilate very well. Look at what they're doing in Minnesota constantly, these Somalis.
We have other groups, though, like Hasidic Jews. They speak a different language. They don't integrate. Or the Amish, they have a different language. They don't integrate. But there's not...
Well, the Amish aren't immigrants.
Well, what I'm saying is the integration.
The Amish don't integrate, but they also keep to themselves, and they don't get in other people's business.
Well, that's my point. They don't blow themselves up. The Jews aren't blowing themselves up. So I think it really becomes a point of what separates this culture from these other cultures are like that.
Yeah, I did a bit of reading into this. And the idea of America actually helps us out here because we really don't have a certain set of the American race versus European DNA.
Swedish, German,
yes.
Right.
So basically, I forgot where I read this, but you're not really considered a true Frenchman until you're fourth, fifth generation Frenchman. Versus in America, if you are first generation or if you assimilate enough within the first generation, just as much as I have, then you're pretty much considered American.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've kind of meandered around a bit, but I don't know. There's a lot of stuff you could say about refugees and what's going on in this country, and I'm not pleased with what's going on in this country with the refugees. Trump hasn't stopped the flow of refugees, and
it is significantly down from what it was, though.
It's currently going back up again.
Yeah, and it is, and that has a lot about to do with the deep state. But we'll get into that later.
Supreme Court. Anybody know when they might rule on that case?
It's going to be a long time because they haven't even decided whether or not they will take the case, and then it's still be another 6 or so months. So
yeah, oosh! I just got
sure
really.
they were gonna take it.
I just got.
Well, they haven't made the decision yet. But you know what? Let's move on from some bad news to
let's go to this. Yeah,
some good news.
So the Trump administration is looking to close some alternative to ICE detentions, deportations. So I'll just read some of this. The Trump administration is shutting down the least restrictive alternative to detention available to asylum seekers who have entered the U.S. illegally in what is called a cost-cutting measure that will favor programs with higher deportation rates. Immigration activists consider the move a callous insult to migrants fleeing traumatic violence and poverty. Nearly all of the program's participants are Central American mothers and children. By a White House that has prioritized deportations that break up families over assimilating refugees. I think that pretty much tells what's going on.
Yeah.
The article immediately gets into this is just women and children. You have to accept this. You have to accept this.
Yeah, but you know what?
You get to go home. I don't know what. The point of you came here legally, you get deported. That's the rule, okay? You know what you're getting into. You're the one to blame for that. I didn't make that decision. You did.
And, I had a family member who actually was fighting for these the people that were in these detention centers because they have one separated for women and children only.
Yeah.
Fighting for better. Better care there, more, this and that, and also even just to let them out into the United States, etc. I mean, these places, they need to be shut down. And actually, she was fighting for them to be shut down, but only so that the people could be let back into the United States, not so they could get deported. You know what I mean? But at the same time,
Well, we're not shutting down detention centers with this.
we're not.
No.
Oh, I
These
thought
are
they
the
were
more
shut-
lenient detention centers.
Oh, okay, never mind. I
Think of
misunderstood.
these more as a YMCA type thing.
Okay, gotcha.
This is like a more like soft alternative to using ICE detention centers, and
So-
we're getting rid of that program. So now it's just detention centers.
It's just Okay, well then, but what about the people? You said they were going to send people back.
Yeah, they're going to send them into programs now. Like detention centers deport people a lot more than the program that we're cutting.
That's why this
Maybe
is a
I'm
good
thinking
thing.
about maybe that. Okay, but the program we're cutting, the one that was lenient, did it house mainly women and children?
Yeah.
Maybe that's the one I'm talking about. She was trying to get those closed down, which when it ends up happening, you're going to end up getting deported. They're not going to end up being released
Yeah.
into the United States. I'm just saying, like, they want to try to follow the law. You know what I mean? When they protest against Trump's policies and say, oh, he's breaking the law, but really,
There's no law on their side.
yeah, exactly.
No, I'm pro get as many deportations as possible. So
Yeah, while it might seem cold to some, it's a valid fact that the United States doesn't owe anyone a place within its borders, just as much as the typical American isn't owing a place in my birth country, the Philippines.
Right.
like they bring up like they're coming from Central America and it's poor and all this stuff. Like most of the world is poor compared to the United States. Like, does that give them a right to be here because they're coming from a place that's poor? Like, if every poor person in the world just gets to come to the United States because they're poor, can we sustain the country because we did that? No. Okay, we're just going to bring our country down by doing that. That's not how countries behave, and that's not a standard which anyone holds to any other countries but our own. Okay, no one, because, Central America is poorer than Mexico, but Mexico doesn't put up with this. Not at all. They get deported real quick. But for some odd reason, because we're a richer nation, we're supposed to feel guilty over something which is not held to the same standard to any other country, except, the United States and Western nations.
You just nailed it, man. It's a philosophy of guilt.
Yeah. That's all it is.
Yeah, I might be late to the joke, but I want to say, dear white people, stop subscribing to liberal white guilt. Sincerely, rational colored people.
Was there anything else from that story to get into? No, just, Trump's cutting a program that would have helped them avoid deportations more, and now they're just probably going to get deported, so that's cool. But recently, we have a story coming out. Did this happen in Texas?
It actually happened in New Mexico.
New Mexico? A Border Patrol agent was found seriously injured on the side of the road. Do you have that story up, Bobby?
Yeah, he was an off-duty Border Patrol agent who was assigned to Deming, New Mexico, which, if you know how the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, they kind of have different zones, and that was part of the El Paso zone. And they said that the guy was found on the side of the road. He had serious injuries to, I believe it was his head, his arms, his hands. His head, his chest, and his hands. And they said that the FBI is actually doing the investigation. And the only reason they are doing it instead of local law enforcement is because they believe that he was directly attacked because of the fact that he was a Border Patrol agent. If it was just a regular, everyday mugging, I know that's a weird term to use, local law enforcement would do it. But because of the fact they believe he was targeted for his job, the FBI is doing the investigation.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, he was off duty, so he was plain clothes. Cartel. Sounds like a cartel attack, man. I mean, they do little dossiers or whatever on these people they get.
Yeah, the region immediately south of the border in that area is directly controlled by the Juarez cartel.
Yeah.
And just, the people that advocate for open borders or a lax sense of borders, they don't care about this guy's family. That they don't care about, like, the danger that puts him working in Border Patrol by being so lax about these things. It just upsets me a lot. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about this, Kris?
Y'all pretty much nailed it on the head. This illustrates the dangers of working on the border. That's not just innocent migrants coming over. There are hardened criminals, especially with these attacks, brazen attacks on our government employees.
Yeah, these are people serving their country, doing a duty, and they are being targeted for what they do. And we should do the best that we can to prevent this from happening to them. No exceptions, in my opinion. Let's get into this last thing with this illegal alien that got arrested before going to prom.
This happened.
This kind of like harkens back to the deportations for breakfast thing.
The guy, he was an 18-year-old high school student. His name is Diego Puma, and he lives in New York and goes to a high school in New York. He's originally from Ecuador. A judge actually, or an immigration judge, actually ordered him to be deported back in November, and they're finally getting around to it. And it was just a few hours before the prom was supposed to start when they came in and arrested him to deport him.
I wonder if he was wearing his tux.
Probably.
I wonder if he had the chance to leave a prom dumpster anchor baby.
You want to look good when you're going to get deported. But, yeah, they created this petition around him, said saving Austin student Diego Puma, and they racked up 2,800 signatures towards the 3,000 signature goal. And the signature goal with supporters writing, "Let him go free. He doesn't deserve this. It's very sad. No child should live in fear for themselves or their families. This is a disgusting act of cruelty, and I hope that the Austin School District and police are not complicit. Release Diego now." So, like this guy knew for a while, like, yeah, you're gonna get deported. Like, it's some sort of sense of cruelty that they deported him right before his prom. Like, yeah, that sucks, but like, did you not know? You don't have any excuse. Like,
Yeah, it was back in November when the judge issued the deportation order.
yeah, this guy's been hiding out for quite a while. I mean, I didn't go to prom. I didn't care about going, but like,
Because you were nominated prom king like I was.
but here's the thing, like, he's going to prom for a school paid by taxpayers to pay for this guy who's not an American citizen to go to that school. None of these people think that's a wrong thing.
But the families, these are members of our community.
The thing is, like, the dude is pretty much stealing in a sense by doing that. He's taking money from taxpayers to pay for his own education towards a system which he's never paid into.
But this is the leftist version of charity, where money paid to the government under threat of force is delivered out to non-citizens, and that's charity for us, where we have no say in the matter.
For sure. I mean, Trump needs to fix this immigration system. He's making strides. Obviously, things are going to happen here and there that might be like one-off type situations. But if we had the money, I mean, we're going to take in refugees every year. We have to take in
refugees are different from illegal immigrants.
Right.
Keep in mind
saying,
that.
but if we get this sort of immigration issue under control, we'll have the funds and we'll have the resources to be able to help people more accurately. Like this whole thing trying to say that, oh, it's just a bunch of women and children crossing the border. Sometimes it's just children. Like sometimes they just send their kids up here, getting raped along the way, some dying out in the desert, and there's no parents.
Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. We incentivize that to happen. We're the reason why they come. Because we are complicit in giving them free education, giving them food stamps. The reason why women and children are coming here is because we give them reason to come. If there was no food stamps for them to get, if there was no education for them to get, if there was no free healthcare for them to get, if it was extremely hard to get to this country because we got a big-ass wall, like, they're not going to come. And these complaints that they're having of, oh, women, children, we're not going to have that problem because they're not going to want to come here in the first place.
Was it women and children assaulted the border agents? I don't believe think so.
And I don't think the cartel is exactly their highest priority is protecting women and children. That's not. They have other agenda, so.
Even if you're a woman or a child, that doesn't entitle you to come here. Like, that's not an argument. This is just emotional pleading.
Here's your equality.
Equality with the entire world. Yeah, that was the last story for immigration, though. Let's just get into some of these other things we got for the national news. So the first thing I know, Bobby, you wanted to get into was the CNN thing.
Yeah. So this happened directly after the attack that happened in London with the London Bridge attack, where the guys hit some people and then started stabbing some people. After it happened, there were a group of Muslims that apparently had an anti-ISIS protest, but it turns out that CNN was actually directing them and apparently was paying them as well.
Oh, excuse me, Sam, do you gotta go soon?
Oh yeah, so I'm gonna have to say bye.
Oh, no, yeah, it's all good.
All right,
Good having you on for the little bit we did.
right on. Been fun, guys. Thanks a lot.
Do swidania. Dobry wieczór.
Right.
But, yeah, could you repeat what you said before?
Well, I was saying that after that London Bridge attack, there were a group of Muslims who apparently had an anti-ISIS protest, but it turns out that CNN was actually directing them where to stand and apparently was giving them posters and whatnot as well.
So just like the epitome of fake news in that sense, they're creating the protest that they want to cover.
Exactly. And CNN was even denying it on Twitter and whatnot, but people were just calling them out for fake news because the video of it happening couldn't be more clear.
Remember a simpler time when journalists reported the news instead of creating them?
Feels like they're just trying to create it all the time now. We have a lot of stories which don't actually come from anything at this point.
Yeah, and they're directing them to group closer together, and they fix the camera point in one location so it may look like a much larger protest.
Yeah, I've seen the video of this stuff, and it's just like well, like how so frustrating. Why can't we just get news on things that are happening? The point of the news is just report on things that happen instead of creating this narrative that you want to uphold.
Well, I remember this story y'all covered a couple of weeks ago, to where it showed that the study showed that journalists have higher emotional instability, immaturity.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Decision-making.
That's probably why.
Yes.
Just the entire news organization of CNN is filled with people that all can't, delineate their own bias. They can't control their own emotions, and they're so emotionally pulled to their causes in life that they have to create stories so they can try and convince the public of stuff that's not happening.
But we also have another story about CNN here.
This also ties into journalists can't control their emotions.
Yeah, and this happened. I believe it was when Trump was talking with it was the president of, who was it? Was it Romania, I believe?
Romania?
Yeah. The president of Romania was at the White House with Trump, and they had a joint press conference. And when they were assigning the seating for different reporters, they stuck the CNN and New York Times people at the very back row. And normally they're like up near the front. And the CNN reporter was brought to tears because of that fact.
Yeah, the irony of this is that New York Times, CNN, they were in the forefront pushing this collusion narrative between Trump and Putin, that Russia influenced the election, but now they have been reassigned to the Siberia section of the White House press room.
And they just cry about it because Donald Trump doesn't care about their fake news organization so much.
And they're trying to be like, oh no, Trump is trying to censor news. I'm like, you're lucky you were even able to be there in the first place.
They should be cut from the press corps. I mean, yeah, they get a lot of viewers, but it's just like, how long can this go on?
CNN doesn't really get a lot of viewers. Like, they're not even in the top 10 anymore.
They do well.
They're not even in the top 10 of daytime people viewing them.
Well, yeah.
They used to be consistently up there. They've dropped back.
Really?
So from Siberia to Gulag.
Yeah. To put it this way, CNN is now on the second page of Google results.
Oh, wow. But they just point back to this, like, perceived, like, credibility to where it's just like, But we're entitled to be the ones that get to manipulate how you think about things. We're entitled to this position in life. We're entitled to how we get to present this narrative to the world, however we get to spin it. And you had to put us in the front. Otherwise, if you put us in the back, we're gonna cry about it.
Yeah, they like to constantly lambaste about Trump's ego, but they fail to acknowledge their own.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. Let's talk about what happened last week in Portland, though. So this happened on Sunday. I believe it happened maybe while we were recording, maybe after.
It was right afterwards.
Yeah. But there was a free speech protest,
it was a Trump free speech rally of what it's being called.
Yeah. And the Antifa showed up to that, and it actually broke out to riot levels. If you look at the video, the police were going all out, pepper spraying, throwing flashbangs and everything. They arrested 16 Antifa at that event. But the one thing that was really staggering is, have you seen the stuff of the weapons that they confiscated?
I've got the picture right up in front of me.
So it's like a plethora of knives and clubs and all these things and bricks. Bricks was the big one.
Yeah, they said one of the guys they arrested had climbed on top of a building and he had the bag of bricks on him. Thankfully, they were able to arrest him before he threw them at anyone.
They were ready to start throwing bricks at people in that crowd. That's how far Antifa is ready to take this. Which I wish the people that would face the Antifa would realize this, because I do know this as someone that's faced them many a times.
Yeah, wasn't it last time one of them bared a flag that said "We will tread," and it's a perversion of the Gaston flag to where it has his fist choking the life out of a snake.
Yeah, that was at the Austin protest. They're openly ready with this stuff. I've seen how they joke on the internet and social media. They talk about if someone has a viewpoint they don't like, they just say oh, well, this guy's ready to be one to sent to the gulag and stuff. And they're so cavalier about this stuff because they're so freaking mentally ill and convinced of their Marxism, even though it's a crappy system written in the 19th century. But they're so deluded into believing this stuff because they're just sick people that They just think that the revolution needs to happen because Donald Trump's president, and they're going to start it if they can. And it's gotten so bad in Portland, especially. I mean, we've had multiple stories about this stuff happening in Portland.
Yeah, especially since the mayor is openly trying to, deny right-wing people and Trump supporters protest petitions and whatnot.
Yeah. And this is stuff that we see all across these major cities, the complicit mayors with the Antifa. In many cases, they are on the side of Antifa, like we have in Berkeley. But this is just how things are escalating, You can pretend that this isn't happening, but Antifa is ready to kill you if you go to one of these things, so keep that in mind.
But they're anti-fascist, so...
Let's talk about this thing with the Democratic lawmakers with getting a BTFO'd at that town hall.
Yeah, the reason I really wanted to bring this up was, you remember how after the election especially, a bunch of Republican town halls were just being invaded by leftists who would do nothing but just try to disrupt it and make the guys look stupid?
I remember seeing a lot of Now This video showing that.
Well, Republicans are now starting to do that with Democrat town halls. They said that there was this one in California with Representative Nanette Barragan. She was having a town hall event at a high school, and the entire crowd was full of just Trump people. Keep in mind, this is in California. Yeah. The entire crowd is full of Trump people who are just shouting, "We love Trump, we love Trump, we love Trump," and to the point where she actually ended up leaving and walking out of the auditorium because she couldn't do anything. So this is more of just a story of, the left is finally getting a taste of their own medicine.
Pretty funny, and obviously, the mainstream media won't report about these kind of BTFOings because it doesn't really suit their aims. But, you think it would be strange that California would do this, but if you look at statistics, say only taxpayers voted in California, Trump would have won California. pretty handily. But, like, you know, you look at how it went in the general election, Trump lost California, big league, you know?
Yeah, and we were talking about this yesterday. I think I saw a map one time that said if only taxpayers could vote, Democrats would only win 2 or 3 states.
So, like, it really isn't that a crazy thing. If you're a taxpayer and you're mad with how these Democrats are treating you in these states, which they treat them very poorly, I mean, you're going to want to, you know, let them steam off somehow. And I think doing it on these Democrats and their town halls is a great way of doing so. I wish one of these things were happening near us. I would definitely go.
Oh, that would be a lot of fun.
Anything else on that? Or move on.
Let's move on.
Yeah. So, Kris, I know this is a thing that you were really eager to talk about.
Yeah, as the resident gay here who has completely lost his senses, it's a tale of 2 pride parades. So, at the Charlotte Pride Parade, gay Trump supporters were denied entry to it, and the Charlotte private organization, they said, we reserve the right to decline participation in our events to groups or organizations which do not reflect the mission, vision, and values of our organization. So basically, if you are not, if you don't have the proper politics, you are not part of the gay community. You're ostracized. This is nothing new. We've seen this plenty of times. It's a minor during the Bush era, but it definitely accelerated during the Trump era, and so this exclusion, this wasn't too surprising because I don't know if any openly gay conservative organizations get to march at pride parades. Not Gays for Trump and also not log cabin Republicans, or Go Proud. But what I want to get to is just what happened recently. The Capitol Pride that takes place in Washington, D.C. They were briefly blocked 3 times by protesters. Not the traditional protesters from right-wing organizations, but protesters from left-wing organizations. They call themselves No Justice, No Pride. They're an ad hoc organization made up of several immigrant activists, non-white activists, so on and so forth, who believe that they want to take a pride and return the parade into a protest. Now, if you let me ramble on here, I'm politically scum, but not everything has to be political anymore. Pride parades are essentially a celebration because we essentially have all of our rights as gay citizens. So these organizations, what they want to do is they want to expand the rainbow beyond gay issues. And this is like the same thing I talked about in the Phoenix Pride on podcast last month, to where they talk about how you can't be just for gay rights if you're not for the gay rights of illegal aliens, you're not for the rights of gay black Americans, gay trans Americans, so on and so forth.
It's like turning being gay into like a value set which you're supposed to hold instead of just like a sexual identity, and like like your sexual identity is supposed to define beyond just like what it physically is.
Yes.
Like it doesn't say anything to who you are if you're gay other than you're gay just by being gay. But now they're trying to like post hoc attribute all these things you need to do to be gay and be considered gay by other gays.
Yeah. This is the cancer of not just intersectionality, but identity politics. So where your sexual identity, whatever demographic that you have, doesn't have to be sexual, is married to a political philosophy, a political identity. And there's no escaping that. Otherwise, I enjoy being called a gay traitor many times at these protests. But more onto this group, they have the same issues that was brought up in previous protests by other leftist organizations, such as Black Lives Matter when they bullied Toronto Pride last year, or by Transqueer Pueblo when they tried to block Phoenix Pride. They complained that Pride parade events, their organizers are too white, despite the fact that the majority of Americans are whites. So if you actually cite statistics, they're actually pretty well represented. But they want to also ban the police from any of these Pride parades because it makes people of color feel quote-unquote unsafe. I mean, I'm a colored person, and I feel safe with police. In fact, they talk about the police brutality problems in these communities. That's when I point out there is minority-on-minority violence. at increasing levels. So I argue that with those statistics, we need more policing in these communities.
I mean, I've been reading Sheriff Clark's book. What is it? I gotta look it up. But Sheriff Clark, who recently joined the DHS, his book is a Cop Under Fire, moving target. Cop Under Fire, moving beyond hashtags of race, crime, and police brutality or something. I don't know. But he talks about this stuff, and he was the guy that was in the head chief of police for Milwaukee, and you talk about the minority crime. He's the first one to say, like, yeah, we need more policing in these communities, but these groups, they're trying to push for the exact opposite. They want to do the opposite of what could be helpful for these people, because they view it from this sort of academic intellectual plane, which doesn't exist on any sort of like empiricist like an empiricist, I don't know, I'm fudging on my words a bit, but like they don't need any sort of like statistics to back up how they're viewing this, and if you give them anything that would make them see otherwise, they're going to deny it. But if you say these things, like, I guess you're not gay anymore in their view.
Oh yeah. And the thing is, this is the brilliant move to the left continuing to eat itself. They complain about too many cis, which is a fancy word for non-trans,
Just like
white gay males.
99.9% of people would be cis.
Yes. So they said they needed more representation. So one of the demands is adding a transgender minority woman to its board of directors. But statistically, that would be way overrepresented for that nuanced demographic.
Where would you even find that candidate?
Yeah, and not to mention that people who should be organizers should be people who get there through meritocracy, not because they have a diversity card or a million billion labels.
Yeah, it's crazy. When people start demanding that positions be filled by people of certain identities, but then not even present the candidates which they would want to fill those positions, you're pretty much just doing it because you hate white people. That's all it is. All you care about is what skin color people are, and it's so ridiculous.
Yes, and I'm a semi-member of the gay community. It really depends on how well they know the internet and my political standpoints. But there's a good deal of older gay folk who feel like they're being betrayed since they fought so long, so hard, invested a lot of time, personal money, efforts. They lost family, strained friendships over fighting for gay civil rights, to be pushed out by the left, to have these pride parades blocked. That's the thing. This is controversial. As a gay guy, I would rather go back to having right-wing protesters at private parades. They protest peacefully without impeding their rights movements. They stay on the sides. They don't block the roads. But that's the thing. The leftists, it's not just pride parades. They block the roads everywhere. It's like BLM. But that's an other topic. But I want to run through some of these photos from the Twitter feed on this. It talks about Wells Fargo equals native genocide, and no pride in prisons, no pride in pipelines, no pride in deportations. And I want to read a little thing from their flyer from No Justice, No Pride. And it says, what is No Justice, No Pride? We are an ad hoc collective organized as activists from the District of Columbia. Our members are black, brown, queer, trans, gender, non-conforming, bisexual, indigenous, two-spirit, formerly incarcerated, disabled, white allies. And this is their alphabet soup. That's the thing. Two-spirits, not to get on a tangent here, that is a minority. If you think transgender are minority Americans, two-spirit are a minority of a minority.
Yeah, like if you look at demographics of homosexuality, it's actually very represented by white people. Like homosexuality is even lower amongst people of like minority backgrounds. So like, when they demand like, oh, we want a trans black woman to fill this position, there might not be one of those in like the city you live in. There's like a good chance that you're not going to find one. Like, you want to be represented by someone that doesn't even exist where you live, probably. It's just this, like, hypothetical thing that you make in your mind.
Yeah. And as you mentioned earlier,
And just what does this have to do with being gay?
and this is all code for anti-white male. So I'm reading from the Resist This Twitter feed. It talks about pride is for trans people, queer people, black people, Latinx people, not Latino, Latinx.
Latinx.
Because it's apparently the triggering to use a Latino, Latina, which is their language. Muslim people, working class people, women, acts of rebellion. Now for cops plus banks. And it's just this intersectionality. It has nothing to do with being gay.
No.
Yeah. But I want to I just want to mention this really, all the banners are stupid. But the most stupid one is, there's a picture of a raised limp fist. And it says, limp wrist, raised fist, anti-corporate queers resist.
A limp wrist?
Yeah, limp wrist, because limp wrists are associated with gays. Raised fist, because that's associated with communist revolutions. Anti-corporate queers resist.
I'm not afraid of that.
I'm not afraid of that.
I'm not. I'm sorry, Trans Anarchist Alliance. You don't scare me, okay?
Yeah.
When it reminds me of May Day. Remember when we went to Wendy's and they had the crippled person in the march? Or like also on May Day when we went to Austin, they had a person in a wheelchair in a march. It's like, okay, at least be like the strong revolutionary group. Don't be the limp-wristed.
Oh, that would be ableist.
Revolution is.
Yeah, they call this. Let's not go on a tangent here, but they call themselves the working class. But if they do work, if they're not trust fund kids, they work at fast food restaurants. These are not your typical blue collar workers, which make the bulk of the traditional communist revolutions dangerous. So I'm not scared of a limp wrist. I will throw a fruit punch on that mofo.
I'm not afraid. You're not revolutionary. You're just LARPing. I don't know.
Yeah. See, they're brave enough to confront liberals, but not. You're not seeing them come out to traditional conservatives. But of course, they're different from their Antifa friends, who are a lot more militant. But I'm just gonna say just one joke. Just seeing all this really degenerate stuff from the gay community just makes me really regret getting gay rights. I believe that was a mistake. I mean, when you weigh the positives and negatives, there's a lot of negatives coming out.
From your viewpoint, gay rights wasn't right.
Oh no, gay rights was like, gay rights are punching left with a limp wrist.
It's always a fucking treat to talk about this stuff. Let's go on to this Melania Barron stuff. You got the stuff on this?
Yeah,
Bobby?
this is something that we don't really know. We don't really have to go into too much detail of it.
This is a quick thing.
But Melania Trump and Barron Trump, who are currently still living in New York City, they're set to make their full permanent move to D.C. to live in the White House with Donald next week, which is something that they said they were going to do once his schooling was over. His school's now over, and they're going to move. So that's that, really.
People are like complaining about the protection that they have to give to Melania and Barron in New York for so long, weren't they?
Yeah, they were like, oh, it's wasting so much money trying to protect them there. And it's like, you know what, just don't worry about it. It's only going to be for a while. Now they're going to be, by the time we do the next episode next week, they'll be in D.C. living there. So.
And this is what we've been saying from the very beginning. Like, they only plan to stay in New York since when Barron would be able to finish school. But the leftists just don't think about that stuff. But yeah,
they've had so many conspiracy theories like, oh, they don't love each other because they're not living with each other.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of that.
Bullshit.
It's just like, maybe it's hard to like manage like your life when your dad's the president. Maybe you have to do some things that kind of suck for a while. I don't know. But yeah, so we're gonna be able to hear the end of that stuff next week. So I guess that's good. The next thing I wanted to get into was related to Mitt Romney. I guess I wanted to bring this up just because it shows the level of garbage that the establishment is in this country, both on the left and the right. So we recently have stuff that's come out to where we know that Mitt Romney, if you remember back, he was running to become the Secretary of State, which currently Rex Tillerson is. But Romney was considered to be the front runner for a while when he was running. And who was the one that gave the suggestion for Romney to run to be Secretary of State? Hillary Rodham Clinton. Which, I mean, if you think back to Mitt Romney, remember during the election, was it post or I believe it was before he was confirmed the Republican nominee? Mitt Romney came out with this giant attack on Donald Trump, this incessantly going after him. The establishment hates Donald Trump, and what does it say about the establishment when the GOP establishment of Mitt Romney is encouraged to run position by position from Hillary Clinton, the mainstay of the Democratic establishment? They're pretty much the same team. And that's everything that Donald Trump's up against. Do you have some specifics on that?
Well, I just wanted to also add that there is a story going around, which I have every reason to believe is true, but Joe Biden is actually now pressuring Mitt Romney to run for a Senate seat in Utah. Which I have a feeling if he did run, he would probably win it. But that still goes to show the type of people that are influencing him. He's definitely establishment, and he's no friend to the Trump administration.
It's just so seedy with how these Democrats are just so okay with even suggesting such things to someone that's supposed to be on the right. But, it's kind of an illusion with a lot of these things. Should we talk about this Puerto Rico stuff, really?
Yeah, we do need to, because as we were talking earlier, I was looking up this information. Puerto Rico is actually voting on whether or not to become a state. Now, keep in mind, this is a non-binding vote.
Election.
Yeah. Congress would still have to decide whether or not to actually let Puerto Rico become a state, but it actually passed overwhelmingly with 97% of the vote of people saying, yes, we want to become a U.S. state. Problem is, turnout was only 23%. It was almost historically low turnout for Puerto Rico. And the thing is, though, is Puerto Rico, it's got a population of about 3.5 million people. So if it did become a state, that's 6 electoral votes, essentially, that would always be blue. Not only that, but it has one of the, if it was a state right now, I mean, Puerto Rican citizens are United States citizens. It's been that way for 100 years.
They don't have exactly everything in the way of, like, an American citizen, right? But
Puerto Rico currently has one representative in the House, but that person cannot vote. And also, but the whole thing stems for the Puerto Rican government debt crisis, which I know, Chris, you're looking up information on that right now, right?
Yeah, there's outstanding $7 billion of debt for this island of 3 million. You said 3 million people, right?
About 3.5, yeah.
Yeah, 3.5 million people. And back in 2015, they defaulted on a $58 million bond payments. But they tried to save it with having a moratorium on debt. But as soon as that moratorium debt expired on May 1st, then boom, the creditors sued. So now they're seeking a quasi-bankruptcy. If we're trying to admit states to the union, for me, I'm not as concerned with the ideology of the citizens. We should also factor the objective: can they keep their finances in check? Are these type of people we want to let into these 50 states? We have states that have massive debt problems with cities.
Well, keep going. I'll say when you're done.
Yeah, with cities, especially all over California, that are filing for bankruptcy. So having an entire island that is in a quasi-bankrupt state.
Yeah, and I mean, not only that, but Puerto Rico currently has the highest unemployment rate of any U.S. state if it was to be a state. And with the fact that it's, what did we say, it was $70 billion in debt, and that's just public debt. If you add in private debt too, it goes up to $120 billion, which if you look at per capita, that's extremely large. Even compared to U.S. states. And that's one of the issues. The only reason that they would want to become a U.S. state is so that they can get bailed out. We don't owe them the ability to bail them out. That's their own problem. We should not let them become a We should not let them become the 51st state. I mean, if you want to let them in but kick out California at the same time, I'm fine with that. But they've actually voted 4 times recently to become a U.S. state every time it's passed. The last time was in 2012. Their situation has only gotten worse since then, which is all the matter to not let them in.
Yeah, if they were to become a state, it's only for the purposes of bailing them out, which is not something that we would want to happen. But I don't know. We'll have to see how this vote went. I mean, I guess they're going to have to talk about it in Congress about
Well, every single time they voted beforehand, Congress has just ignored it. And with their debt issues right now, if they talk about trying to bail them out, they'll probably bring that up. But with the Republican House and Republican Senate, I highly doubt they're going to let that happen.
And the low vote turnout makes it non-binding, so it's not exactly voted against.
Well, it was non-binding to begin with, but the fact that you only had 23% turnout, that's really, really bad.
Yeah.
Because if turnout, I mean, think about it. Turnout for U.S. elections is right around 55 or so percent. And that's about, anywhere between 50 and 60%. That's only 23% of registered voters. Like, that's.
Yeah, it's just really low. And like you say, with the debt problems across many different states, Illinois is the biggest culprit at the moment. It is the most indebted state to ever exist in American history presently. And there are many other states that are on the verge of similar situations, like Illinois. It doesn't help us at all to bring on another state that's just going to immediately be a similar situation. That's not going to help anything. So let's go into what happened here with the journalist that got indicted with felony writing at the inauguration, though.
Yeah, he's currently he's been indicted by a grand jury on felony charges for participating in the riots that happened on Inauguration Day in D.C. He's currently facing up to 75 years in prison if he gets convicted. Now, the thing is, though, is his trial date isn't until October of 2018.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's over a year from now. He's already pled not guilty, but he's having a motion hearing in April of 2018 before the actual, main case is in October. So it's going to be forever before that actually comes around to it. Now, the thing is, though, is this doesn't actually list what he's being charged with besides, felony writing. But I assume that the reason it's up to 75 years is he's probably being charged with a bunch of different things that are stacking on top of each other. And even, I'm going to go ahead and say it, probably at least half of those will get dropped. Because what they do is, in order to try to convict someone, you charge them with all that in the kitchen sink, and then as you start going through things point by point, they start knocking them out, saying, okay, well, you're guilty of this, but not guilty of this, so we'll just get rid of that. Or you don't have evidence for this, so we'll get rid of that. But you know what? I mean, there was so much destruction and whatnot that happened in Washington, D.C., and journalists are no friends of the United States right now. So, frankly, I hope he gets the full 75 years.
Do we know the name of this guy?
Yes, his name is Aaron Cantu. He's a staff writer at the Santa Fe Reporter.
Yeah, that's the one thing about journalists. We're talking the study that we had spoken. It was when Sydney was on the show. That's when we brought up the report on it. But just a lot of people get into the field of journalism because they're political radicals, mainly Marxists. So it's not really surprising when they get caught up in these sort of things. They go to these events like the inauguration, and they use the cover of being a journalist to, commit violence. Or, when we go to our events, the Antifa have people out there that are journalists, that are 100% on their team, that are out there just to, be subversive. It's not surprising at all for them to be doing stuff like this. But, I don't know, pretty cool he'll go to jail, hopefully.
Yeah, I'll get into the next thing we wanted to talk about was what's happened in Indiana regarding some voter fraud that happened there. And there were 12 employees of a Democrat-linked group that were focusing on trying to mobilize black voters in Indiana. Well, they've all now been arrested for filing fake or fraudulent voter registration applications before last year's general election. And they said that that group, although we don't know the exact number of how many were false, in total they collected 45,000 voter registration applications. So who knows how many of them were fraudulent. But we do have the fact that 12 of those people have been arrested because of the fact that they were in on it in trying to submit these false voter application forms.
But as the joke always goes, that's impossible.
Yeah, because obviously, voter fraud doesn't exist.
That doesn't exist.
I wonder if the Russians are involved.
Yeah. Bobby, does it say if those people are Russian?
Let me hit a Control F, RUSSIA. No results.
Oh, so it's fake.
Narrative busted.
Oh, good thing that. But yeah, every single week now we've been pretty much talking about voter fraud, and hey, 12 of them are arrested for it. Maybe something's going on. I don't know.
I mean, you never hear about Republican groups filing false voter application forms. It really makes you wonder, is that the only way the left can win?
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah. Why do you think they care about keeping so many illegals here?
Oh, yeah. I mean, people, we've
Why do you think they're pushing for so much automatic voter registrations?
Yeah, and we've talked about how Mike Pence is leading that group to look into voter fraud claims, which they'll have the results by next summer. So this is just one more step to reasoning. We need nationwide voter ID at a minimum to try to fix the voter fraud that's happening in this country.
Which the next story is also related to voter fraud, which kind of like an older meme that has always been said, but still very true to this day. So turns out there's been some ballot requests from people that are dead.
And this happened up in Dallas. Now, remember, I think it was last week or the week before, we talked about those 700 mail-in ballots that were falsified up in Dallas. And this also happened up in Dallas, but this was just people that were this was 17 people that we know of who were deceased that apparently applied for ballots to vote in the May elections that happened up there. So, it might be linked with the same people who did the 700 mail-in ballots, but
Could be, or they could be working on separate different things, and that's just the culture of politics out there.
yeah.
I mean, a lot of these big cities that are, very blue, this is common occurrences for them. Places like Chicago, that's a common occurrence for places like that. Well, what do all these places also have in common, though? Well, not anymore, but they've been sanctuary cities. Dallas, sanctuary cities don't exist anymore in Texas, thank God. But, so they do the fraudulent registration so then they can get illegal aliens to vote in these places. It's very transparent once you accept the reality that, these things are going on. But of course these things aren't. It's not happening. It's impossible, as the Democrats tell us.
I mean, I was a Republican every day of my life until I died. Then I became a diehard Democrat.
But let's get into this last one before current year college craziness. Bobby, were you the one that put this up?
Yes. The Supreme Court has decided to review a case to ultimately rule on whether or not the police are able to use your cell phone tracking data without a warrant. Now, it hasn't said whether or not they've decided. Obviously, this was just saying that they've decided that they will hear the case. Now, like we know, it takes months before they actually submit their ruling. And they said that the lower courts have ruled that a warrant is not required because people voluntarily share their location data with third parties, including the telephone companies themselves. So by the police asking the telephone companies, people have already agreed to that. But this is one of those things where it really begs the question, and I just kind of wanted to go around the room real quick and just have all of us say whether or not we think the police should be able to or should not be able to use your cell phone tracking data without a warrant.
I mean, I believe they do, but I'll hear what Kris has to say, and maybe I'll play devil's advocate for a little bit, because I feel like I might believe it's something a little different.
Kris?
I'm completely against this for American citizens. If you are not American citizens, such as if you are a green card holder, refugee status, or God forbid an illegal, then you should be. Then the police should be able to track you without a warrant using your cell phone location.
Yeah, most definitely there. Just the one thing is just like, what about in cases of, Islamic terrorism? Couldn't we be using these avenues to try to help? I mean, obviously we're not doing a very good job with how we do it, but I mean, if we're going into the cell phones of these potential terrorists, we could be figuring this stuff out a lot earlier before then these terrorist attacks are happening.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you are on a watch list, then it's easier to get a warrant.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to state that, they do bring up a very good point, that when you're using apps on your phone and they ask for your location data, you do give them the ability to use your location data. Question is, to what extent are they allowed to use that? Are they allowed to give it to the police? That should be the real question, is not can the police use your cell phone location data, it should be, should the police be able to request that from companies that you have voluntarily given the decision to give it to them for? How much can they use it? I would say that, when you agree to those things, a lot of times you're agreeing to the fine print, and people don't read it. And a lot of times it does allow you to use it. Now, that would bring up the question is, if you don't read the fine print and you're agreeing to do this, you're still agreeing to do that. That's just me kind of playing devil's advocate to what Kris said. But in general, I would actually agree with Kris. I don't think they should be able to use it. But I don't want to say it's people's stupidity, but people's just not fully understanding what they're doing. They're pretty much being punished because of that.
Yeah, and not to mention we had a not too dissimilar issue with the IRS targeting conservative groups. So anytime you give government power, just ask yourself, are you comfortable with this power being used against you? As much as I'd like to track Islamic terrorists using their cell phone locations, if we switch over to another Obama, I won't be comfortable with the government having that kind of power.
That is a good
totally
point
agree.
there. But wasn't Senator Rand Paul talking about this stuff?
He's been very against that this entire time. He thinks that the government shouldn't be able to use your location, anything regarding your cell phones at all. And I happen to agree with him on that. But yeah, I just wanted to say the only thing that I would have to say about that is that when you agree to letting third parties know, just understand what that entails if the Supreme Court does rule in favor of police being able to use it.
Yeah. Let's get into current year college craziness, though.
The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic. You're fucking a white male!
The assumption that women are naturally better caregivers is part of patriarchy.
Die, cis, scum.
You will not divide us! You will not divide us! You will not divide us! You will not divide us!
It's time for some current year college craziness.
Current year college craziness, the segment that always keeps on giving. Kris, when we were doing the show prep for this, you exclaimed as well, just like you thought that this segment would die down over the summer, but it's only been getting better, which means it's only getting worse. But we got a pretty good story to start this one off. So 10 Harvard-bound students, they got their acceptance letters. They've had their acceptance letters revoked from them because of some offensive memes that they're posting in a private group that they're posting in. Do you have the stuff on this, or I could go in as well?
I'd like you to do it.
Okay. So the memes were being shared in two groups. One was called Harvard Memes for Horny Bourgeois Teens, and the other one was called General Fuck-Ups. And so they shared some memes, and they're pretty offensive. There was one about a Jew. Some about terrorism. I don't know. Kris, can you describe some of these memes?
My favorite one is...
that's the mindset that we need.
Yeah, I'm offensive as they come. So my favorite meme is when they said, what do you call a Mexican who commits suicide? And it says, piñata time.
So yeah, maybe that better describes the memes for you. If you want to see these memes, you can just look them up yourself. But yeah, so they were sharing these memes to each other, and school found out that they were sharing these memes, and we can't have edgy memes on our campuses. So they got their acceptance letters to Harvard rejected, which I guess that sucks. I mean, I've never had the aspirations to go to a place like Harvard. I wouldn't want to. I guess they'll probably be able to go to anywhere else if you are accepted to Harvard, but that's got to be pretty disappointing as well, though. And you lost it because of memes.
Yeah, and it illustrates the danger. Granted, Harvard is a private institution, so they will have the rights to use their discretion to revoke or accept anyone for any ridiculous reason they can make up. It's just we are allowed to comment on these ridiculous reasons. These are private correspondences between these students, prospective students on social media. But there's a greater argument on how much effect should public correspondence have, because they said that they do have a team which scans these applicants on social media. And on a slightly related topic, there are public universities who are considering adopting speech codes that extend to, as you guessed it, social media off campus.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the memes right now, and I don't really get offended by stuff too much. I mean, I don't think this stuff's so bad. But I guess if you have a weak sensibility, yeah, this stuff's pretty hardcore. I don't know.
Yeah, this is part of the reason why the left has killed comedy. You cannot be comedic in the left. You can't have humor in the left. They attribute what is funny they map it onto something more serious, such as if you're laughing at these jokes about anti-Semitism, then you must be anti-Semitic. But the real reason why the majority of people laugh at these things is because they're messed up, not because they're messed up.
Well, okay, I'll just read the Jew one. So it says it's got a picture of a rabbi, and it's just why don't Jews eat pussy? Because it's too close to the gas chamber. And I've had someone tell me that joke in person, and it's just I don't know, is that worth is that so bad that oh, we can't have this person go to my college anymore? They thought that was funny.
Yeah.
I don't.
According to Harvard, they are of low moral character if they share lewd jokes.
But then if you don't share lewd jokes, I don't want to be your friend. You're probably boring. Yeah, maybe you're smart enough to go to Harvard, but you probably suck as a person. You're just not cool or interesting.
I mean, most of the people who go to those universities are, I want to use the word elites, and being elites kind of comes with an elitist attitude towards things. And a lot of times that is, that sort of situation. So
what is elite humor, though? Because
it's nothing. It's sitting around and being like, "Good sir, how are you doing today?"
I guess it's making fun of rural whites or white males.
Christians or something.
Yeah, but not all is lost in higher education. In the article, Erica Goldberg, an assistant professor at Ohio Northern Law School, she calls herself a free speech enthusiast, and she talks about how this is a transgression on free speech by revoking their acceptance letters. Granted, again, this is a private institution, but if you're purporting yourself to be a place of higher education, you should have free speech you should be the bastion of free speech. And she compares it to the humor in these memes are the same humor that college kids play in the acclaimed game Cards Against Humanity.
The Cards Against Humanity is pretty most of the jokes are aimed at. Well, they're either weird sex jokes, just dildo or big balls or something like that, or it's just attacking rural whites.
Yeah, but there's some combinations that I loved which attacked gays and other minorities.
Yeah, well, it is like how you play the game.
Yeah, if you play with interesting people, you can get a lot of more interesting results.
Yeah. I don't know, I haven't played that game in like
but
4
that's
years.
the thing. That game, Cards Against Humanity, it actually attracts a large liberal audience. So it's not always lost in the realm of humor, but the elites don't want it to be publicly shared or privately shared.
Privately shared. So, it's just like, if the guy's good enough to go to college, I kind of don't care what jokes he's like making with his friends. Like, it's whatever. But hey, it's their call. It's their call. Let's go into this study that you have.
Yeah, and this was a study. It's titled "Many Colleges Fail to Improve Critical Thinking Skills." Now, the original article we have is from the Wall Street Journal, but they require you to subscribe. Thankfully, some other website has mirrored the article as well. But it said that freshmen and seniors at 200 colleges across the U.S. have taken a little-known test every year to measure how better they get at learning to critically think, and the results were very discouraging. They said that at more than half the schools, at least one-third of seniors were unable to make a cohesive argument. They were unable to assess the quality of evidence in a document or interpret the data in a table. And they said that they found, after reviewing the latest results from the public colleges and universities between 2013 and 2016, that's how they were able to come up with this data. They said a lot of these are also prestigious flagship universities, possibly even Harvard. We don't know for sure because I haven't actually clicked
Ivy
on the
League,
article.
though. Probably.
Yeah, there's a few at least Ivy League schools in there. But it said the test results indicate that the average graduate shows little or no improvement in critical thinking over the 4 years of college. And they said that some of the biggest gains actually occurred in smaller colleges where the students are less accomplished but are able to accomplish more, stuff like trade schools or, but not like big name universities.
Community college.
Yeah, community college type things. But, that just proves that college doesn't make you smarter. It doesn't improve your ability to have critical thinking.
I think, like you say, what, a third aren't able to make arguments?
Yeah. I wonder what third that could be.
It's kind of the same liberal thinking of, like, having a degree makes you educated. Like, that's not an argument. Just because you have a degree doesn't mean you know anything. It's just like, what are these colleges even doing at this point? I didn't learn really to become smarter from college so much. I mean, I guess I learned some things about pedagogy. But, it's just not important to go to college to learn to be a smarter person. That's a personal responsibility. If you want to be a smart person, that's on you, because no one can make you learn but you. Not even going to college is going to do that, as this study seems to find. Kris, do you have some thoughts on colleges not really teaching critical skills?
Yeah, I mean, it's not all too surprising from this survey. Of course, there is the prevailing attitude that makes a false equivalence between being educated and being intelligent.
Yeah.
But as the survey mentioned, small community colleges and trade schools, which are not the traditional path compared to for university, they exhibit higher levels of critical thinking. I'm just see those results. If it's a result of that they don't replace their sense of accomplishment with an acceptance letter, that they have to work harder to achieve that same level of accomplishment, or the sense of accomplishment differs into tangible, measurable results rather than entering an elite club.
It could be because just how indoctrinating colleges have gotten in the country. I mean, they're just bastions of leftism at this point. That's definitely not good for your critical thinking if you believe in Marxism.
I mean, there's the thing that people have always said about public schools. They don't teach you how to think, they teach you what to think.
Yeah, just regurgitation of knowledge, not a application of knowledge, which is a true sign of intelligence, so I've been hearing lately. Let's go into the stuff that we have out of Evergreen College. Do you have this up, Bobby?
Yeah, so you guys remember the Evergreen College stuff that happened over the last couple of weeks, right?
If you've been listening to the show, you definitely know. There's the craziest stuff in the world has been going on at Evergreen College.
But anyway, so what happened is since then the campus is pretty much dissolved into chaos, and it's pretty much having like a student mob rule at this point. And they said it's getting so bad that there's a group of students walking around with bats that are pretty much acting as vigilantes to quote community police the campus. And they said the campus was even shut down on last Monday because of active vandalism and window smashing that had happened the previous night.
So Evergreen College, where they wanted to have their day of kick white kids off campus. Now they're divulging into. Oh yeah, Bobby.
No, keep going.
Oh, now they're just divulging into, like the inmates run the asylum, carrying bats around, like what? Say I'm on that campus, Evergreen College, and I support Donald Trump, and say I do what I do sometimes at the university I go to. I put on my Trump hat and I start walking around. What are the odds of me getting hit with a bat there?
Pretty good. But what I was saying was, if you remember, one of the demands that they made in their list of demands was to abolish the campus police and replace it with the student-led community policing. This is what that student-led community policing is.
Means. They got a photo on the article here of these people. There's some pretty ugly-looking individuals.
Yeah, we're scraping the bottom of this gene pool right here.
They look pretty similar to the Antifa yesterday.
They look like if Antifa were to take off their masks, that's essentially what they are.
Yeah, fat, ugly, gross-looking women.
Dyed hair.
You can't really call them women.
Some of them might be trans.
There's a guy here with his hair in cornrows, pulled back, and it's dyed pink.
Of course it's dyed hair.
Always with the dyed hair, dude. Yes. Okay, so yesterday at the protest, I was looking at some of their hair, and I was just like, why do you always dye your hair when you're a communist? It's like that thing in nature where, like, poisonous frogs have bright colors, so, like, poisonous women dye their hair, like, green.
It's a warning sign to stay away.
I mean, there's some males there, too. I mean, at least what I seem to be males. This goes back to what I was saying earlier, to how do you fulfill your sense of accomplishment? Do you feel your sense of accomplishment through tangible, objective, measured results, such as, oh, hey, I built this project, I created this business, I published this research? Or do you have your sense of accomplishment from, oh, hey, I died from low investment projects, such as, oh, I dyed my hair a funny color, or I adopted a gender or sexual identity that doesn't exist?
I dyed my hair to fight traditionalist beauty standards.
I mean, we've all privately felt, and I'm not sure if we've stated on the show, but we definitely believe these people are mentally ill.
Oh yeah.
And that being said,
I know they're mentally ill.
Yeah,
I know they are.
We know they're mentally ill. That's there's no denying that. But the issue is I wonder just how much of a like a biological factor goes into this, because they definitely do not think the same way that we do.
No, and a lot of them never could.
Exactly, and they can't. They cannot comprehend the way that we think of things. And like we were saying, you understand their argument. I understand their argument. Either one of us, we can understand what they're saying.
If I put on a communist mask and went out there, I could be the guy doing the debates on their side better than them.
Exactly. We know how they think. We know what their talking points are. We can argue their standpoint using their own evidence. They cannot even comprehend the way that we even think things. And that is extremely dangerous getting into this day and age where political violence is becoming more and more common.
Because these people will die to see the world that they want to see, which is a communist America.
And it's like we've been saying, they're not trying to build anything. All they're doing is seeking to destroy.
Only to destroy.
Like, I know that we're going to do the Wednesday show talking about the protest that we went to yesterday, but there was an InfoWars video that was recorded after we had left, and the guy was walking around interviewing people, and he asked him, he said, hey, what's your favorite communist country? And the guy's like, America. Like, how retarded do you have to be?
There's not much going on in their heads. But,
Maybe the hair dye.
What can you do?
Maybe the hair dye's getting to
Maybe the hair... Oh, we should do more FDA testing of these hair dyes.
That
might be what's causing the communism.
It very well might be.
Probably not, but
I don't really want to. I don't really want to continue to talk about Evergreen College.
But talking about hair.
Yeah. So it turns out that the Berkeley Student Health Plan at UC Berkeley is now covering laser hair removal for the transgendered students.
With the student health plan.
Yeah, with the student health plan, which I can guarantee you, it's going to be taxpayer funded to a degree. So, if you live in California, your taxpayer money is going to hair removal treatments for the transgendereds,
which it's like a cosmetic procedure.
Yeah,
it's not important.
It's laser hair removal on the face and neck for quote fertility preservation procedures. What even is a fertility preservation procedure?
Traditional fertility preservation is to preserve sperm and eggs when the patient in question undergoes a sexual transition to where they will be rendered infertile. So they will have these frozen sperm, frozen eggs in the event that they should unfortunately want to conceive children.
The thing is, though, is neither laser hair removal or fertility preservation are usually covered by any insurance providers at all. Because they said that, and this is according to the Alliance for Fertility Preservation, they said it's normally not covered by insurance even if the person choosing fertility preservation has cancer. And now it's being covered completely by UC Berkeley Student Healthcare Plan.
I don't get this. Like why? Do they give a reason why? I would love a reason.
They just said it's available for the transgendered students and also for the students who can, quote, prove medical necessity. So if you can't prove your medical necessity, just say you're trans and boom, you got it.
Well, what's their medical necessity?
Yeah, that's the thing. Not to get too off topic here, but college is supposed to be a place to where young adult minds have they're budding intellectuals. So we nurture the intellectuals in a college environment. They should have. It's not a place to where they go. I know the traditional concept is, oh hey, this is where you explore everything, but I disagree with the everything part. You should at least have somewhat figured out what you want to do in life, including your own gender identity. I have trans friends myself, but it's healthier for them to not immediately go into college and to handle their transition before entering a new environment filled with all new people having newfound independence.
At the end of the article, it says, for those transitioning opting to undergo any of the procedures offered by the Berkeley Student Healthcare Plan, the Berkeley website includes a step-by-step guide for transgender surgery for students.
Okay. Well, I'm glad they're doing something that really matters. Sarcasm. But, let's get into another UC Berkeley thing. God damn. Can we just get rid of California? Well, if there was no California, this segment would be a lot shorter.
The show would be half as long.
Yeah, pretty much.
But, do you guys remember back when Milo Yiannopoulos went to UC Berkeley and they had that first really violent protest?
Yeah, of course.
There was a video of that one girl who was wearing, it looked like a Trump hat, but it wasn't. It was a hat that said, what was it, Make Bitcoin Great Again, I believe? Yeah, and she was a fan of Milo, and she is kind of a fan of Trump.
She was like a libertarian or something, I remember.
But she was there. She wasn't even there to do anything. She was there just to talk with people and, strike up conversation and see how people think. She was being interviewed in the one famous video, and the guy just randomly walked up and pepper sprayed her right there while she was just talking to the guy in the camera. And she is now suing UC Berkeley for failing to protect people over the violent protests that happened not only then, but also in the other battles of Berkeley that happened as well. Because, we've talked about how the Berkeley police did absolutely nothing. Well, campus police did absolutely nothing during those events as well. And that's pretty much what her lawsuit is saying, hey, you're not protecting us, you're not doing your job, we're suing you right now.
Yeah, hopefully this lawsuit will cripple the university to where they will cancel the aforementioned laser hair removal plan.
Yeah, hopefully that's out of the budget after this lawsuit.
Anyways, but what I wanted to, the last thing I wanted to say was, you guys remember when that first happened and Trump sent out his tweet saying, hey, if universities cannot protect the First Amendment, we should cut their federal funding. We absolutely need to cut UC Berkeley's federal funding. We absolutely need to cut the federal funding from every single university that allows stuff like this to go on.
And like it is the fault of the campus police. I mean, if you go back to that incident in particular, the riot happened on UC Berkeley. There was what $100,000 worth of property damage.
Oh, at least.
And like you can watch this in the videos. The police were told to stand down. They all hung out inside a building, while outside these anarchists, anarcho-communists are beating people up and burning stuff and throwing stuff and graffitiing, and it's like that mayor in Baltimore during the riots that happened out there.
We need to give them a space to vent.
Yeah, that's the mindset of the administrators that let this stuff go on, and yeah, you should be sued for every single penny because you're goddamn malicious. If you're an administrator and you are, someone that caused this to happen, you are spelling physical harm upon people because they have different viewpoints than you. Disgusting.
But yeah, I really don't want to talk about UC Berkeley anymore.
Let's talk about something also sad but a little more humorous.
Yeah. So at the University of Iowa, a professor by the name of Sarah Bond said that white marble sculptures, like the ones that were made in Greece and Rome, the very beautiful works of art, she says that white marble with beauty contributes to white supremacist ideas.
White marble.
Yeah.
Yeah, she argues that these marbles, this is historically true, that they were colored. The statues that we see in textbooks, they are not the finished product, they were the canvas. When you look into actual history books, you see that these marbles, it was depicted like some wacky hippie Renaissance fair. It was this menagerie of colors, but paint wears out over time, so we're left behind with the marble sculptures. But that's where she says, oh hey, that's why we need to return color to the ancient world or to classical art and to museums so that we can defeat white supremacy. I'm not a white guy myself, but it's not a controversial thing to say that, hey, white skin is beautiful. Like, I believe that like any skin, as long as you're not covered in acne, can be beautiful.
And she's trying to claim that because of the fact that the paint is worn off and all that we're left with is just the original white marble, we equate nowadays that white marble with beauty. And she's saying that's what's leading to the influence of white supremacist ideas today, when it's like, what?
Yeah, it's art. It's meant to be beautiful. Let's take a white marble statue and map that same argument. It's not going to happen.
She's saying that, quote, most museums and art history textbooks contain a predominantly neon white display of skin tone, which has an impact on the way we view the antique world.
Hashtag museums to whites.
Well, I'm sorry that, one of the best ways to be able to make stone that doesn't break over time, doesn't wear down, is white marble. I'm sorry that happens to be the same color as, the skin of the people who made it.
Perhaps she wants us to create structures out of obsidian, but obsidian is brittle.
Well, you know what? I have an idea. They just opened a new coal mine in Pennsylvania. Let's make coal statues of colored people.
Coal statues.
I'm sorry, people of color. That's what they're referring to themselves as nowadays.
I would light those coal statues on fire. The freaking coal burners.
Oh, God. It's just, my thing is just like the statues aren't humans though. Like there's statues.
I mean,
statues can't cause white supremacy. They're statues. Maybe they can, the way that they think these days.
Well, what I was saying is I took an art history class, and that was a very liberal class. It had a very liberal professor. But what she was telling us was when they made those statues, the human models that they had sitting there or standing there, that they chiseled them off, was not always the same person. What they would do is, if you look at them, it's all a perfect human body form. Perfect abs, perfect hair, perfect legs. the people that they would have, they'd say, you have good legs, stand here. I'm going to chisel it, make it look after you. You have a good chest, come here. I'm going to chisel this after you. I like the way your hair looks. Come over, look at it. Because if you notice, in all these statues, it's always older faces with big beards, but younger bodies that are very physically fit. And the point is, what they wanted to do is they wanted to present the ideal human form. It had nothing to do with white supremacy at all. But
they're just white people trying to seek beauty in art, but they want to get rid of that because white people are bad, and that's about as far as that thought process goes.
She would have a better argument if she was saying that the white marble statues were ableist, because they don't have any statues of disabled peoples or people who aren't physically fit. It's only the really physically fit males. She would have a better argument with that than saying, "Oh, it's white supremacy."
I feel like I would just want to go off and burst, but I'm also left at a loss for words.
Yeah, this reminds me of the entire the leftist obsession with Fearless Girl in front of the Raging Bull, where they attribute so much importance to such an inanimate object. I remember seeing it in our favorite fake news channel when they had a little cutaway to Fearless Girl, and they said Fearless Girl is still standing in the snow. Of course, she's still standing in the snow. She's a freaking statue.
I like the fact that they put up the dog peeing on her. That was the best part.
Yeah, now that is arts.
Yes.
Only it was a white marble dog.
White marble's like a rock. Like, rocks don't contribute to white supremacy. like
the white marble isn't even native to a lot of the regions where they made those.
Yeah, it could be an African white marble.
They had to literally ship a lot of that white marble from regions that they controlled in order to get it there.
Rocks aren't races. They're rocks. I don't like this. It makes me really mad.
Another attack on traditional arts.
See, this is the problem with the left. They don't build things. They only destroy things. They hate beauty. They just dye the hair green, and they look ugly, and they wear gross stuff, and it's so gross.
And they don't shower either.
And I don't want that to be acceptable. No, don't try to be gross. Try to improve things. Try to
Hey, if everything's beautiful, nothing's beautiful. That's the ultimate goal.
They're trying to turn relativity to art. So tampon blood is equivalent to red paint.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a guy that teaches art, so I get frustrated a lot with this stuff. I have to deal with this stuff all the time.
And so, do you believe that the art should be defunded?
Hell yeah, defund the arts. It just goes to fund leftists. Don't even make good art. But
the left can't art.
Yeah, or meme, or do anything good. I guess they can be nice sometimes to some people. I don't know. Let's go into this last story. This one not gonna make me feel any better. But so Rutgers, the prestigious university, is holding a college fair for illegal aliens. You got the specifics up on this, Bobby?
Yeah, they're hosting an information session on the college application process for illegal immigrants and their families. And they said they are proud to host an information session and serve a fair on the college application process for DACA or otherwise undocumented students and their families, they said. And they said it's going to be happening on June 10th, which I guess was actually yesterday. And they said it's going to address the admissions process and how to complete the application, as well as financial aid and consideration for school-based scholarships. So,
why are they creating programs for criminals? Why? I don't get it. I really don't. The scholarship should go to people that are supposed to be here, not any Joe schmo that crosses the border.
And not only that, this isn't the first time Rutgers has done this. They did same thing back. They did the same exact thing back in 2015. They didn't. I don't think they did in 2016. It doesn't say they did, but they did it back in 2015 as well.
That fair would be a good place to call ICE.
I think we're going to make a trip to New Jersey, friends.
Hell yeah.
We need a time machine, though.
No, let's start up a Kickstarter. We need the supporters of Trump Republic Radio to send us to New Jersey so we can call ICE.
Drive all the way to New Jersey just so we can be the ones to call ICE ourselves.
Yeah, that would be a hell of a podcast.
I mean, I'm brown enough to where I can pretend to be illegal and just enter there, have a GoPro on me, get their faces in, try to ask for like, hey, what's your name? I'm Sam Hyde. Who are you?
What are some protections that the university can do to prevent me from being deported? Because that's a thing that's supposed to happen to me.
Yeah, you see, I was supposed to be deported back in November, but they just got around to it. And my friend was deported before his prom, so I don't want to get deported before, like, classes start, man.
That was awesome. I love that. I want more of these impressions of illegals that are like also just like pretentious.
Oh god.
We gotta do more skits on this show. When we did that transcript thing, that was the best.
More scripts will be coming, don't worry.
But just this shouldn't even be legal to do. Like you shouldn't be able to make programs for illegal aliens to go to college. That should be like the first like sign of like they're doing something illegal. It's got the word illegal in it.
The day will come, Enzo. The day will come when these people pay the price for the crimes that they are committing.
It's like a joke.
Oh, we're cutting that part out.
No, I'm just kidding.
Construir la pared.
I kid. I just don't think that these colleges serve a purpose because they don't even serve the people of this country anymore.
But we're all illegal aliens.
Yeah. Let's go into international news.
Yeah,
I'm flustered.
We're already 2.5 hours in.
Okay. Oh, great. So the London Bridge attack there's been like 2 now, isn't there?
This was the London Bridge attack that happened a couple weeks ago, where they ran over some people on the bridge and then they got out and started stabbing people.
Yeah, so it turns out one of those guys was on a documentary on Netflix called The Jihadi Next Door, where it was about people in the UK that support ISIS. And, yeah, the guy in the documentary committed a terrorist attack.
Boy, who would have seen that one coming?
Who would have thought? I just thought he was going to be one of those peaceful ISIS supporters that I'm always hearing about.
You know, he's just trying to get the educations.
It's ridiculous.
But that's that. And you know what makes it even worse is the fact that they are arresting people for hate crimes, for calling out, saying anti-Muslim things, while the mayor, Sadiq Khan, has said that they cannot track their jihadists. How about you start with the fucking documentary that was made? Start arresting those people.
Go figure out where those guys are. Maybe go check out what they're doing.
Didn't they also say recently the UK has like 3,000 potential jihadis there that they can't track right now? How can you not track these people? Yeah,
I believe it was like 28,000.
Or was it 20,000? I'm sorry. It might have been they thought it was 3, it was 25. 25,000 potential jihadis in your country. You've had your 3rd terrorist attack in the last 2 months. You're not doing a damn thing about it.
But they did get some arrests in London. Dozens have been arrested for quote hate crimes. Because we got to stop the people saying mean things about Muslims on the internet. We can't stop, the terrorists. That would be too much. That'd be too hard. As Sadiq Khan says, we cannot track them, but we sure as hell can track people saying mean stuff on the internet. So. Anything to say on that?
I'm glad that we have whatever our version of free speech in this country actually is, because we would never be able to survive in the UK the way things are right now.
Yeah, there's a recent poll that we got. Where's the poll from? Do you know?
This is a poll that is from ICM. Now, I'm not sure what ICM stands for, but at least they have an acronym.
Yeah, so the poll out of the United Kingdom, it relates to the stuff that we're talking about. 2/3 of Muslims would not snitch on a Muslim terrorist. So,
I mean, you can go back to our Islamic terrorism in Europe midweek episode that we did a few weeks back, where we went over all these different statistics of Muslim immigration and refugees into Europe, even going down country by country. But I just want to go over the exact same poll that we're getting this from. It says that over 50% of Muslims think homosexuality should be illegal. 23% of Muslims want Sharia law to become the dominant legal system in the UK, and 31% are completely comfortable with one man having multiple wives.
see, this is the thing, you know, the myth of moderate Muslims. You know, the difference is, like, the radical Islamist is the one that pushes the guy off the building. The moderate Muslims are the ones that just cheer at the bottom. You know, they don't see a problem with what these guys are doing. You know, they support when the stuff happens, and you know, we're just gonna see more. It's Ramadan, so. So there was another attack in France. There was a guy that attacked, was it like a police officer?
He attacked a police officer and a guy that was standing next to a police officer. I was able to, I don't know if you guys watched it, but I watched the security camera footage that was released of it happening. There's just a police officer and a couple other people standing around talking. And this guy just ran up and started, like, hitting them with a hammer. And he said he was part of ISIS. And also, did you guys see the pictures of inside the Notre Dame Cathedral? They made everyone put their hands in the air as they were standing there. You know, what a sight to behold that was.
Yeah. So the guy was an Algerian. His name is Farik Ikayen. He's 40 years old. And this guy has a kind of an interesting story because in 2009, the European Commission, which is an unelected executive branch of the EU, gave him an award for writing pro-immigration articles. So, like, yeah, you know, honor this guy that goes out to become a terrorist. Maybe something's wrong with, like, Okay, so if a guy that's committing a terrorist attack is writing pro-immigration articles, that may be reason to question being pro-immigration. Just a funny thing, you know. Just you could ponder. What are some other? Well, we got a lot of terrorist attacks.
That's pretty much all the international news. It's just terrorist attacks and terrorist attacks and terrorist attacks. And this one here that we're about to go into, I actually added this while we were doing the show. A Molotov cocktail was thrown into a Paris restaurant. Yeah, and they said so far there were at least a dozen people suffered from burns and smoke inhalation. This was a restaurant in the northern part of Paris, and they said the fire crews did put out the fire, but the restaurant has been almost completely destroyed. 3 of the victims were airlifted to a hospital, and it's also unclear if the suspect was in custody. So, who wants to guess any quality that that person who did it might have?
Amish.
Amish? You got $10 in Amish?
Radical pagan.
See, I'm gonna be one of those people. I'm gonna say it was a Buddhist, I think.
Oh.
So we'll see how long it takes before we figure out which one of us is right.
Yeah, it's a fun game. I have a feeling that we're all gonna lose, but
there's only a 99% chance of that happening.
So let's touch on this the 3 Muslim women that randomly attacked this lady in the United Kingdom. So there was this nursery worker lady in the United Kingdom who was just walking down the street, and she just got slashed by these 3 Muslim women who just kept on shouting Allah, Allah, whatever. And do you got the specifics up on this, Bobby?
Yeah. No, actually I don't. Not yet. It's taking a while to load.
Yeah, so this happened in Northeast London, and they said The three women behind her were chanting the Quran and Allah.
She was walking to work, quite casually.
Sorry, my computer just went off.
She said that they pulled her to the ground, punched her, kicked her. One of them pulled out a knife and cut her arm from her wrist to her elbow.
Just out of nowhere.
I mean, I guess, that's just part and parcel of living in a major city.
Yeah, this is just a normal thing. Nothing significant about it.
They said they're not treating it as a terrorist act.
And no arrests have been made so far.
Jesus Christ.
See, if she said that those women were committing, saying something offensive, then maybe the police would be on this case.
Yeah, maybe. She should have did the attack on the internet. Let's go into some at least more humorous bad news.
Yeah, so the city of Madrid, Spain, one of the oldest cities in Europe, they have now banned manspreading on all of its public transportation, on its trains and buses. So Enzo, you want to describe kind of what manspreading actually is?
It's when you're sitting down and you take your knees and you spread it so your crotch is kind of out, sitting normally.
But that's for men, though.
Yeah, it's when a dude does it. It's kind of like a comfortable way to sit, but it's also a part of oppression, so gotta ban it.
Yeah, they said that they're putting signs on their buses and in the trains. Features a stick man spreading his legs to extremely cartoony large proportions that normal people don't even do, with a big red X over it saying, "Respect the space of others." Now, they said the one thing that's unclear is whether or not people actually receive a fine for it, but we shouldn't even be discussing this because it's just stupid.
God, Spain's got an unemployment rate of 25-30%. You think they got more important things to worry about than freaking dude's legs are too far apart on the bus?
Yeah, and Madrid's mayor is a woman, so that probably played into it as well.
Great.
They should have never been bailed out.
Do you want to touch on this Austria stuff?
Let's skip that one.
Okay. So, there was a Gays Against Sharia march in the United Kingdom, and it was deemed homophobic and will be protested by LGBT activists.
Yes, because this to commemorate the first anniversary of the Atlanta Police nightclub shooting, which is tomorrow, June 12th, as we are speaking this. And the left, from the articles I've read, some of them are talking about this alarming trend of the far right using gays as a way to to set themselves against Muslims. But so again, everything's treated as intersectional. So the far left, so the leftist gays are the ones who say, "Oh no, we shouldn't. We should be a solidarity." And so they have these sides such as gays and Muslims unite against oppression, gays and Muslims unite in solidarity. But here's the thing: being Sharia phobic isn't necessarily tantamount to being Islamophobic.
These Muslims don't want you to have rights, okay? They don't want you to live, so they don't care about your rights to begin with. So being against Sharia is pro-gay. You can't be pro-Sharia and pro-gay. I know they want that to be the way it is. It will never be that way.
I think it's like those feminist women who say, "Oh, Islam is a feminist religion." I'm just imagining some of these queer activists saying, "Oh, Islam is a homosexual religion." See how long they keep their head for saying that out loud. And the countries where Sharia law is the most strict, such as Afghanistan, Iran, Mauritania, Nigeria, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Somalia, Sudan, United Arab Emirates, Yemen. That's the death penalty for people like us. This isn't a moderate this can be considered a moderate position because the majority of the population support these laws. Laws don't exist in a vacuum. They exist by consent of the governed.
Yeah. Well, everyone knows our stance on Sharia law since we were at an anti-Sharia march yesterday. But
yeah, it's just go to the dissenting left to where they're more concerned about not looking racist than they are about talking about doctrinal truths. And doctrinal truth is Sharia law is incompatible with Western civilization.
Just to bring up because these marches were all coordinated together yesterday on purpose. We took part in one of 28 different cities in the United States that had an anti-Sharia march, and they also did them also in Europe. And it's crazy that just being against Sharia law can bring out so much opposition to fight you, all because, we gotta stand up for our Muslim communities. We can't let people say mean stuff about Islam, even though, hey, this is the stuff that's written in the Quran. Like Sharia law is what ISIS follows. That's just how the Quran is written. That's what you're supposed to do. ISIS is the ultimate. They're the ultimate Muslims. They're doing it correctly. Where the leftists will always say, ISIS, they're not real Muslims. No, they're doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, the organizers, this is called the Unite Against Hate March, and this is set to take place in Manchester. And this is to honor the victims of hatred. So one of their speakers, I'm going to slaughter the first name, Shiza Hobbs. She was forced into an arranged marriage at 18 with a man who beat her, believing it was his right under Sharia law to lay his hands on his wife. And there is Muhammad Fiaz, a Christian convert from Islam, and there is the founder and former leader of the English Defense League, Tommy Robinson.
Tommy Robinson's pretty cool. I like the EDL a lot.
Yeah. So of course this is all called far right. This we saw the same with Trump and Le Pen, that the left believes they can just brand something far right, and it is automatically wrong, that it will taint the entire message. Such as, I remember many months ago when there was a quote-unquote far-right gay pride parade march through a refugee ghetto.
Yeah. But let's get into this last thing that we have for Europe. So the Czech Republic is now going to join Poland, Hungary, and Slovakia in refusing UN or EU-imposed refugees. They talked about doing this a bit in the past, but now the Interior Minister Milan Chovanec has said that they made the decision to withdraw over concerns of terrorism and vetting of migrants, mainly of Muslims from the Middle East, and they are willing to incur the massive fines for doing so.
Yeah, they said that the country's president, Milos Zeman, hopefully I pronounced that correct, he was one of the few European heads of state to actually support Trump last year, and he's also called the current wave of migrants a, quote, organized invasion, and he's drawing lots of parallels between large-scale migration and the opening stages of the Trojan War, which, I mean, that's pretty much the truth. But if you want to wonder how much the fines are, they said under the current program, the Czech Republic faces a 250,000 euro fine for every refugee it turns away. But you know what? Even that price is lower than the cost of letting the refugees in.
At least their people don't have to die.
Yeah.
Or get raped.
But I would like to say, I don't think we have an article about this, but I think Trump is actually going to Poland next week or the week after that. So there's a very good chance we could be getting into, Poland might actually be the United States' closest ally here in Europe. Well, who would have ever thought that would happen?
When the rest of the European nations become Muslim, that's down the line. Give it 20, 30 years. But even though the left-wing parties in the Czech Republic supported doing this, for them it's not like a left or right thing. It's just like an us or them thing. They pick themselves. So good on them. Let's go into the stuff in the Middle East. So there was big news came out yesterday. I believe it was while we were swimming.
It was when we were driving to swimming.
Oh, yeah. So, ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi has been killed in an airstrike.
Now, this was a Syrian airstrike. This was not the United States. But that being said, this is great news for the fight against ISIS going on right now.
Yeah, huge news. Baghdadi is a very kind of mysterious figure. I believe he's only been recorded on video once.
If more than once. Can't be more than 5 or
It's
so.
a very hidden figure that runs ISIS. But, I don't know. Yeah, it's really great that he's dead. The leader of ISIS is now gone.
Yeah, they said he was killed in a white phosphorus bombing. And if you look at the pictures, like, it looks so brutal. It's awesome.
White phosphorus is some pretty crazy stuff. The Israelis like it. Yeah, the next thing we want to go in that's happening in the Middle East is a lot of these Arab nations are cutting ties with Qatar. It was all like a coordinated thing on Sunday night.
Yeah,
wasn't
they
it?
all did it within a few
Same
minutes
time.
of each other. They said that Qatar was... They said Qatar was, like, funding terrorist groups.
Yeah.
Which, coming from, like, Saudi Arabia, that's the most ironic thing ever.
I think...
I mean, they're experts in it, so
Yeah,
it
they
takes one
would,
to know
they
one.
would know.
I think it is a response to Donald Trump's foreign policy in the Middle East, and he's starting to realize... They're starting to realize, like, yeah, there's a new sheriff in town. We do need to kind of clean this up, and we do need, like, a fall guy in this. So they all just kind of chose Qatar to be the one that singled out. But, I mean, this is unprecedented. These nations were all closely tied together. There hasn't been infighting amongst the Arab nations like that in a very long time. But Erdogan has said that he's going to back Qatar, so it's great that our other ally, Turkey, is...
I was going to say, if
on an opposite side.
Erdogan says that he's going to back Qatar, then I guess it's a really good thing that the other nations pulled their support, because I wouldn't want to be friends with anyone who's actually friends with Erdogan, so just saying.
Yeah, and also as a side note, while there are sanctions on Qatar, which is pretty put a stranglehold on their economy, especially food supply, Iran, to my current knowledge, has sent so far 5 plane loads of food to Qatar. So it's interesting to see this. It's usually an Arab versus Persian dynamic, but you see Arabia reaching out to Qatar.
Yeah, it's really redrawing like the lines of support amongst these different nations in the Middle East. Really a very dramatic moment in the current geopolitical situation of just the Middle East.
Let's see if the NATO of the Middle East, let's see if they repeat history.
Well, you know what? As long as we don't have to pay for it, I'm okay with whatever they do to each other.
Yeah. Let's skip this next thing that I have on here. Do you know about the Iranian parliament stuff, though, that went on?
Yeah, this is one of those things that it happened and then people just kind of like stopped talking about it. A group of ISIS terrorists, they stormed into the Iranian parliament building and killed 12 people. A lot of them were disguised as women, like wearing burqas and stuff, and that's how they were able to get by. And they just kind of ran through and they shot and killed 12 people, wounded 46 others. They said the assault that they did, it actually lasted for several hours. And it took the Iranian parliament completely by surprise. They had no prior knowledge of it about to happen. And ISIS has claimed responsibility. They said it's the worst terrorist attack to happen to Iran in years. And one of the generals for the Iranian military said, "We will avenge the blood of those martyred in today's terrorist acts." So maybe that means that Iran's going to step up their fight against ISIS now that this has happened.
It's pretty interesting. I mean, it's very uncommon to hear anything about terrorist attacks against Iran. So, let's go into this weird thing that's going on in Canada. So, this is only in Ontario where they passed this law. But they passed a law now that the government is allowed to take away the children of parents of kids with it allows the government to take away kids if their parents do not accept their gender identity. So, yeah, as I said, this happened in Ontario. This was called the Supporting Children, Youth, and Families Act of 2017. Very, like, Orwellian name for what this actually does. But it also is called Bill 89, and it passed in Ontario to a 63 to 23 vote. So, The law, which replaces old laws governing child protection, foster care, and adoption services, instructs all children's services and judges to take into consideration a child's race, ancestry, place of origin, color, ethnic origin, citizenship, family diversity, disability, creed, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. So, pretty much anything.
Freaking leaps.
Man, that's like a really scary law to pass. I'm glad I don't live in Canada.
Yeah, it is a gross overreach of the state power into they're governing these family lives, these family units.
Yeah, then just, if a parent has a disagreement with their kid just saying like, oh, I feel like a boy today, and they're just like, but you're not, and they don't accept that, you can lose your kid now. And that's like how militant that like this acceptance of the trans stuff is being forced, to the point of they'll take away your kids because you're an abusive person for just not agreeing with this stuff.
Not even that. The article here that we're reading, it says that back in April, the child services in Ontario, they got in a lot of hot water because they removed 2 foster girls from a couple's household. After the parents, they said no to lying to the girls, telling them that the Easter Bunny is real. And they said that one of the foster parents said, we have a no lying policy. So because of the fact that they told the kids that the Easter Bunny wasn't real, they got their kids taken away from them. Like, that's the type of mindset that the Ontario Child Services has.
It's a scary thing when you give the state control and decision over someone's children, because it's their children. It's the closest thing that you can create in connection to yourself, your family. And these aren't decisions that the state should be making, because they do those studies on like this stuff with the trans trend that's happening right now. A lot of kids are just doing it because it's the popular thing to do right now. They down the line forget about the stuff. They just change and go back to how they were, and now we live in a world where it's just like abusive if you don't give your children sexual gender confirmation surgery when they're like 12 years old. This is stuff I could have never comprehended hearing about as a kid growing up. It's crazy to believe this is the world we live in.
Let's go ahead and skip the next article
I mean, that's funny. The next article.
Yeah, I was wrong. Let's go over it.
Yeah, let's go over that one. We have a lot of terrorist attacks, but I kind of liked this one because of its low tierness, but also like the absurdity, I guess.
Yeah, so this happened at Canadian Tire, and there's a woman. She was wearing a full-face Islamic veil, and she was wielding a flag that's reminiscent of the Islamic State. She was shouting Allah Akbar, and she swung golf club at employees and customers at the Canadian Tire big box hardware store. And she was shouting death threats. But when the employees and customers tried to settle her down, that's when she pulled a large knife from clothing. But it was wrestled out of her hand, and the police got to detain her.
It's funny, but like this is what Islam does to people. It forces people into a stupor to where they convince themselves to go on jihads with golf clubs in like
hardware
stores. Like, what on earth? It's so strange, but yeah, it is pretty funny. Funnier than a lot of these stuff that's going on.
I mean, I guess what makes it humorous is that no one was seriously injured.
That is the good part.
And the fact that she used a golf club as her terrorist attack.
Yeah, at least it's not like an explosive.
You gotta bring down
Or a
Canadian
nail bomb.
Tires. Canadian Tires is a symbol of Western imperialism.
Nothing says the encroachment of imperialism like a Canadian hardware store. Nothing says oppression like a Wendy's. We can skip the stuff that I had on South Africa. Let's just go into these things that I have in Australia and the Philippines, and we can be done. Because we're about 3 hours now.
So down in Australia, some journalists have been threatened by Antifa because of their Facebook posts, and they said, Antifa Australia said that Aussie Pride can F off, and they said that Antifa Australia claimed that members of its quote family were responsible for sending threats to journalists, and they said this. I'm sorry, I'm kind of all over the place right now. But anyways, Antifa Australia has been targeting a lot of journalists online who are been pro-Australia because they said that Aussie Pride is a bad thing.
Because Australia is a country filled of predominantly white people, so liking a country filled with white people is evil, I guess, in their viewpoint. That's what Antifa always just comes down to. They're anti-white. They just hate white people, like, across the board. And that's why they're going after journalists that express pro-Australia sentiments. Oh, what a crazy thing. An Australian journalist is pro-Australia. Like, he likes the country he lives in. But, that's how far these Antifa figures go at this point. They threaten journalists. I mean, I can personally tell a lot of stories of how they threaten people in my own life. like the stuff doesn't end at the protest. It doesn't end with them yelling at you. It doesn't end with the weapons that they brought. It doesn't even end with the violence that they're going to commit there. No, it's something that they do every single day. Their networks are huge. They track people. They create dossiers. They send threats. They fulfill those threats. But yeah, I just wanted to bring up that stuff in Australia because it's an aspect of Antifa people just don't realize that they're going after people beyond the protests in the streets that you see make TV all the time now. But the last thing in Australia I want to get into was a Muslim refugee terrorist killed a man and took a woman hostage and injured 3 police officers in Australia. And this guy was arrested for terrorism before and released. So, on Monday, a Somali-born gunman laid siege to an apartment complex in a suburb of Melbourne, Australia. And the guy was using a shotgun in his siege, and he died in the firefight with the police. But, so this guy, do you have when he committed the terrorist attack in the past?
Yeah, I was trying to find that.
Yeah, he was born in Somalia, and he used refugee status to go to Australia, and
yeah, I found it here. They said that it doesn't give the date of when he actually committed the attack, but he was acquitted by a jury for his crimes back in 2010. So, but he's also served prison sentences for arson and other violent crimes that were unrelated to terrorism. So, why was this guy in the street still?
Yeah, so the guy was acquitted for plotting a suicide attack in Sydney, Australia. So, this guy is not an Australian citizen. He's served prison sentences for arson and violence. No, just get rid of the guy. He's bad news. But they let this guy go, even though he's been convicted of terrorism before. He should just be kicked out because it's bad dude. But they didn't do that, so there's someone dead now because of that.
And what's worse is the guy who was killed was a Chinese guy who immigrated to Australia.
But, there's no reason for immigrants to be against letting these refugees in. They're the same. We're all immigrants.
Yeah.
There's no nuance. Just we're all the same. The last stuff we want to get into is the Philippines, which we know is your specialty, Kris, since you're from the Philippines.
Yeah, and this segment, it's this is the news from the island of Mindanao. I'm thankful that my village, the Bakr, my birth village, is hundreds and hundreds of miles away on the southern tip of the island versus what's going on in Marawi. It is a highly populated area. So to get into a bit of it, this is we've been speculating whether or not they were going to join ISIS, but the Abu Sayyaf, it is translated to the bearer of the sword. They have pledged allegiance to ISIS, and this is an international effort. A lot of their fighters are not indigenous Filipinos. They come from I'm just going to pull this article right here, from Saudi Arabia, from Indonesia, Malaysia, Yemen, India, Chechnya. The Abu Sayyaf, they are a splinter group from the Moral Islamic Liberation Front. I thought the Moral Islamic Liberation were the worst that could happen to my birth island. But no, the Abu Sayyaf, they are so radical, so violent, and they are so effective. It's a repeat of what happened in Syria and the Levant, the rise of ISIS, because they were so brutal and they had all the other organizations capitulate to them. But the Moros, they commit terrorist acts on their own. Don't get me wrong, but this is how disgusting the Abu Sayyaf is. During the siege of Mari, this took place. They took over this city around 3 weeks ago, and Philippine forces, with American support, are trying to save the hostages that are still left behind. And here's the thing: they're not alone. The Moral Islamic Liberation Front are actually helping the Philippine and American forces. That's how disgusting Abu Sayyaf is. But their goal is to fly ISIS flags over this over the most Muslim city in the Philippines. But they one of the first acts is they attacked the Mindanao State College. They attacked hospitals. They attacked the cathedral. There was a priest and his followers inside. They didn't care. They took him hostage and they killed anyone who wouldn't convert. And yeah, there's about over 100 hostages left, and this is not a small band of people. These are 500 fighters who took control of a city. They displaced tens of thousands of people, destroyed precious statues, monuments, completely eviscerated a college and a cathedral. And Philippine forces is still fighting. There's a few dozen who escaped so far from captivity, but the hostages, they're starving as we speak.
Yeah, and what we were saying is we had this really big article where they were destroying that cathedral. They smashed they smashed statues of like the Virgin Mary and other saints. They took a picture of Pope Francis and ripped it, and they burned the place down. And so that's kind of how we wanted to talk about that story. But thank you, Kris, for giving us more information, because there's a lot I didn't even know, some of the things that they were doing.
Yeah, Abu Sayyaf, just to clarify, when they first made waves, their bombing killed over 100 people in a Berry attack.
Well, and it just goes to show like the imperialist nature of Islam. Like they're going out to seek territorial conquest over cities. But two, they destroy the presence of prior inhabitants. We see with ISIS all the time. They destroy statues, destroy paintings, destroy churches. Anything that shows a presence of the people there before, they want to destroy. They want to obliterate. They want to take off the face of the earth. Because they are an expansionist imperialist doctrine, these Islamists.
Yeah, and not even other Muslims are safe. When they broke away from the Moros, they actively killed Moros just as they love killing Christians.
Something else.
Well, I guess we can end today on a good note, however. They said that as part of the Marawi siege, U.S. Special Forces are actually aiding the Philippine Army now in the fight against ISIS.
Oh, they're actually having boots on the ground now? I thought they were having technical supports.
Well, it's still aiding them.
Yeah.
Well, this has been an ongoing thing. I know it started like 2 or 3 weeks ago or something.
Yes, it started 3 weeks ago, the siege. And thing is, there's 1,000 of them in the city.
Yeah, Chris.
That's an army.
Yeah, Chris, you're right. They don't have boots on the ground, but they are providing technical support. Any help that they can provide is very good at this point.
Yeah, hopefully, Duterte, he has a lot of problems, but I really hope that he changes his focus from this nonsense drug war they want to fight in the Philippines and fight the actual threat. There's a little army that took over one of your cities.
Yeah.
Well, I hate to say it, but if it gets to the point where they know that there are no civilians left in the city, then the ISIS fighters no longer have leverage in that fight.
They're going to try to keep them as long as they can, but the civilians are starving right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bad situation out there. We'll have to see how it progresses over the next couple of weeks.
But no, we're so damn oppressed in American college campuses. They
Yeah.
don't know the
If
definition
only
of
that
oppressed.
college campus that ISIS destroyed in that city had a band of bat-wielding feminist
Vigilantes,
SJWs.
If only accepted diversity. They're probably homophobic. That's why ISIS attacked.
Probably.
That's why they attack in London, isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah. So much for diversity being our strength.
It's destroying some of us. But yeah, that's gonna be the show for the week. We're looking to have the anti-Sharia March show, the podcast on the midweek mini podcast. We'll probably have that up Wednesday night. That's going to be one you're not going to want to miss because that's going to have first-hand perspectives of 4 individuals that were there at the most hostile kind of protest that went on in Texas against the Austin Antifa, which is the biggest Antifa in Texas, and we know them, and they're starting to get to know us, but you'll get to learn more about the details on that.
We'll
Definitely.
also have some video coming as well.
We'll have some video from that coming out as well pretty soon that we took ourselves. Could always use some reviews on iTunes. Last time I checked, we have 2. Those always help get the downloads up. I know who we're going to have on as far as the Sunday show next week. I'm not going to say who they are really right now, but we're going to have 2 guests on once again. Any other things that we need to say before we go? No? Okay, well, I want to thank you, Kris, for coming on for once again another show on Trumpaholic Radio. And thank you for listening, listener. Have a good week.
Bye, everyone.
До свидания, товарищи.